Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks again for joining us here in Advocacy Arena. And I am so excited to welcome you back to Arena's weekly live chat, where we gather to inform and inspire civic engagement each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central. Today, of course, is January 23rd, 2024, the fourth Monday in January. And we're here to make some noise in our continuing commitment to start the week with some good trouble, necessary trouble to stay informed, inspired, and uplift our civic engagement. Thank you for continuing to join us, participate, and amplify this initiative of Advocacy Arena each week. Today, we'll be continuing our deep dive into Project 2025 and more on Chapter 2. I know initially I said, each week we'll take a chapter, but it's a lot. And I have to warn you guys that I always prepare for my spaces, but today I am in like information overload state. And so it's like my brain is still processing all of the information that I've been taking in, and it has yet not gotten into the download stage that hopefully will kick in very soon. But I'm so happy for my fabulous co host who's here with me, who also prepares very well. And I know that she has some things that she would like to share. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then I'll discuss some of the other hot issues that we're going to cover. Of course, I have some things that I've highlighted regarding Project 2025, but I also, of course, we have a lot of information to cover regarding the election. This is the year, and there has been a lot of activity just in this past week. So we're going to cover some of that. And I see our friend Joseph is here. I'm going to go ahead and invite him up because I had the great pleasure of co-hosting with him yesterday in a pop-up space where he did a phenomenal job. And I just want to give him his kudos and props and look forward to him hosting more spaces and being a part of it. And I hope that when he does, that you guys will join and support him too. He's a natural. And he has a lot of information to share with us because Joseph kind of travels between three states and he keeps up with what's going on in those three states politically. And I think that is a very crucial, um, um, you know, distinction for us to have and hone in on and learn from. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host to say hello and welcome you guys, and let's get our chat started.
Hi, well, hello everyone. I'm glad to be here today on this Monday, and I just want to point everyone's attention to the fact that today marks the 51st anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Unfortunately, women in this country who probably for many years took the law for granted have little to celebrate when one third of this country has restrictions on abortion healthcare rights, and Roe versus Wade has been overturned. Now, I'm fortunate enough to live in a state where we have a dim trifecta, and abortion rights have been codified in Michigan. But as Governor Whitmore said, she was on Face the Nation this weekend, in case you guys haven't seen it, and she was also on Morning Joe earlier this morning. The trifecta doesn't mean that we are blue. It's very much a purple state, and no Democratic win should be assumed. It took 4 decades to get this trifecta. And even if candidates won during the last presidential election or even in midterms, that's not a guarantee that the next go round is going to go back to the Dems. You know, our primary for our president here in Michigan is February 27th. And August 6th is our primary for state and federal House of Representatives and federal Senate elections. Um, the former guy was the first Republican to win the state since 1988. I know that you guys are fully aware that Michigan is one of those states where much of the media has been saying Joe Biden is losing ground, and I guess we will see. Right now, emotions are very high in this state. You know, on the Dem side, the Israeli and Palestine conflict has been damaging, very damaging. Now, some of it is about the progressives, about these performative protesters, but some of it is very sincere and very real. Um, I have a friend from high school, and actually, I was reminded of this weekend. I have a friend from high school who his grandmother was buried alive. That's how she died, buried alive. So there are deep rooted reasons why some um, Arab Americans in Michigan have the feelings that they have. They have these personal tragedies that have occurred in their family, and it has been beaten into them to be angry and to blame all people of one specific ethnicity, race, religion. And some of it, yes, has been performative, like I've already said. So I just really want us to take that in mind. We already know. We can bring up the subject one time and two sentences will tell us whether or not it's a conversation to even pursue. So, use your energy, use your focus wisely. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm asking you to um, put your energy into projects, people, organizations, movements that are going to make a difference rather than have you feeling frustrated and you end up being apathetic and cynical about the upcoming election. Um, on the GOP side, we have Christina Caramo, who was ousted, but she's refusing to leave or even accept that she's been ousted. So, of course, they're suing her. Pete Hoekstra has been named as the new chair, and they are out of money. And the infighting spells trouble for the Republicans in Michigan during this election season. So at least there's that. Now, one thing that I was a little disappointed or maybe surprised um, to hear Whitmer say was that she wanted to see Biden Harris administration be more vocal about abortion healthcare rights. And I know, and we know in this space that we've seen MVP Harris doing a cross country tour trying to educate and make sure she's reaching out to people and letting them know that this administration stands firmly behind women having autonomy over their own body as a civil right. And it was crazy that I saw this and heard this, but then I realized that, when she first said this on Face the Nation on Sunday, and later that evening, all I saw from the White House, from Biden, from Harris, from their Twitter accounts were thoughts and positions and statements about supporting women, trusting women, and their decision. So I think what we really need to be aware of is that this election, as in every election, boils down to perception. It's not just the issues. It's not just the economy. It's not just abortion rights. It's not just whatever personal one issue, that is making someone decide whether or not they're going to vote for this person or that person. It's also the perception. And that's what we're up against. And so that's why we're here. And that's why we meet every Monday here in Advocacy Arena. We're here to dispel the myths, to deliver the facts, and share good information. So let's get into it. And I turn it back over to you, Misty.
Well, thank you so much. And I am so thankful that we have someone like you as our co host who is there in Michigan, which again, like I said, I'm glad that you mentioned how long it took for you guys to get that Democratic trifecta, but that you don't sit on your laurels with that you still have work to do and to hold on to it, to keep it. So I have sent out a few invites, and I wanted to kind of just highlight some of the things that um, we were talking about as far as topics that we felt like needed to be covered. Of course, Project 2025, and we're going to get into that. And as I had said before, initially, I thought that what we would do would be to take a chapter a week. But it's a lot of information to take in. And I tell you, I read and reread, and, I find something new each time I read. And I've been looking at chapter two for a while. I even went back I went back to page two and saw some things and insights that I was able to take away this time that I wasn't able to the last time. So one of those things that I wanted to us to look at, a couple of things actually, is that they are really pushing the fact of the president having total control. And they say it in so many different ways. And to look at the agencies that come under him. And, of course, the Office of Management and Budget comes under the executive branch. And they describe this office as the president's air traffic control system. Okay, basically, guiding and directing everything. And want to highlight the fact one of the things that they talk about them being responsible for is the president's regulatory agenda. And keep in mind that um, we know that their agenda also is, and I say the Project 2025, of course, is authored by the Heritage Foundation, which is in very libertarian types of ideas that they want to institute. And one of the other things that popped out at me when I went back to page two was that in talking about the Office of Management and Budget is that they view the job as the most comprehensive approximation of the president's mind, and that this role cannot be performed adequately if the director acts instead as the ambassador of the institutional interests of OMB and the wider bureaucracy to the White House. So, they want them to be keeper of the commander's intent. Again, them, pulling that authority and surrounding it into the presidential office. And I will be posting some things in the nest. I did a tweet about some of the opening aspects of these pages in the chapter 2025, chapter 2 of Project 2025. And I did a tweet, and this one, it talks about, I just want to put that in the nest, but they talk about the survival of self governance is at stake, and I love how they are trying to flip reality, because we know literally that our democracy is at stake, and that they are trying to take it to a very authoritarian type of rule and agenda. And so they go on further to say that to meet that challenge, it requires a combination of boldness to bend or break the bureaucracy to the presidential will, and self denial to use the bureaucratic machine to send power away from DC and back to America's families, faith communities, local governments, and states. Fortunately, a president who is willing to lead will find in the executive office of the president the levers necessary to reverse this trend and impose a sound direction for the nation on the federal bureaucracy. And one of the things that I read further in this chapter, it's on page 8. I put the link in that um, to that chapter. But if you look at chapter 2, it's a PDF. If you look at chapter 2, page 8, they start talking about the executive orders that they want to um, undo and return to. And basically, they want to return a lot of the executive orders that the previous president put in place. And I will be putting some of those in the nest to share and for us to talk about too. But a few other things that I want to talk about, and I see Geechee's here. I'm so happy. I was able to be in a space with him and Joseph yesterday. That was a really great conversation that we had. But I want to talk about all the things that have occurred in this election since the last week. Like I also had the opportunity to co-host with him the Iowa caucus, which occurred on Monday of last week. And how many people have dropped out of the race since then? A lot's happened in a week. Also, when we talk about the regulations that we have an ongoing crisis in aircrafts, mainly Boeing, that revolves around this regulation thing, and that our own Secretary of State was stuck in Davos because of problems with the plane. Also, the executive director for the Heritage Foundation found his way to Davos, and he actually had some very interesting things to say to them. So I know that we have Jima Riri, who has come up and spoke, and I've sent out some other invites. So I'm going to give her an opportunity to chime in. And I know Joseph is here, but he's likely working. And when he has a chance, hopefully he'll come up and join us too, as well as Geechi. So, Jima Riri, how are you doing today?
I am
Glad to have you
I am
here.
doing well. Thank you so much, Misty and Soul Sister, for your spaces every Monday. I take away many tools from listening to these spaces. Again, I'm in Illinois, which is blue but could easily flip, kind of like Governor Whitmer said, if we don't keep doing that work. Soul Sister, I'm still stuck on everything that you said. And one of the biggest things is when you were talking about your friend, who I'm assuming is Palestinian here in America. Um, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Um, I,
Yes. He's an Arab American. And that's how they lost their grandmother. She was still there. His family, the rest of his family was here, and she was literally buried alive.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I think it's important, like you said, um, I'm not going through that pain that your friend is feeling. I don't know enough about the whole Israeli Palestinian war that's been going on forever, but I do know that our Palestinian Americans and their families that are there are suffering great pain, trauma, probably feels like genocide, a lot of this. And I think that I haven't commented so much, and I've just been trying to be empathetic because this is a lot of pain and trauma that has to be processed. So, absolutely, you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel grief, you're going to feel sadness. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And as Americans, we need to be able to support and be empathetic. And yes, you can tell absolutely between someone who's using this and acting out compared to someone who's actually feeling and going through it. A very dear friend of mine, her son was very good friends with Wadi, who was the young child that was murdered in Plainfield, Illinois, um, because of the landlord being hateful. Um, and that's been very hard. And we have been nothing but empathetic. There have been vigils going on. The community has really pulled together to support that mom. And again, I think it's important what you said that we have to sit back and understand. Um, and the messaging that I've heard from the White House is Biden and Harris are definitely wanting Palestine to have its own state. And when people are ready, I think that they will get that. I think right now is not the time. The time right now is to have our hearts and our spirit and our soul with those people, with those Americans, because again, we are all Americans here. We only weaken ourselves when we start to divide ourselves, and the GOP has really gotten that down. The other thing I wanted to ask Soul Sister was when you were talking about the media message, I think the media message has been powerful about women's rights. But what about your state of Michigan? Are your newspapers, are your local papers talking about it? Are local news stations in Michigan talking about this? Is are we getting to those rural areas? Um,
I think we are,
okay.
though, G. Marie. I really do. And you know, I would say that the local papers do a better job of covering Whitmer than they do of covering the Biden Harris administration.
Okay.
And that and but Governor Whitmer is aware of national and international news, you know. So I just found it a little bit like, what? When she said that.
Yeah, that's why I
Uh,
was asking because
yeah.
I too kind of felt like that also. So I'm like, you would know best. And the other thing too is I think that the Biden Harris administration has been doing phenomenal also with unions and having people unionize, which is something I haven't seen in a long time. And lastly, go Detroit Lions. That was phenomenal. So thank you guys for the space and thank you for the answer, Soul Sister. I appreciate it.
Thank you, G. Marie Reed. I just really want to add. I want to add something. Yes, there have been some inroads that have been made with the unions and auto workers and the communities that the automotive industry supports. But you have to, or maybe you don't have to because you're not aware, you're not here, you don't realize. Um, the Tea Party movement is when, at the height of it, I was working I was actually still working with the UAW, and we saw this shift. It had been coming, but it became more prominent among membership where um, they were making good money. Some of their parents had been making good money and were very much conservative voters and Republicans, and so we started to see it being infiltrated into the ranks, and we also saw the other side of it. Actually, Sean Fain is part of the other side of it. He very progressive, and so there was already a division that was created. I think his leadership has done some very good amends to bringing people back together and back to the understanding that we workers, we union members, don't win under a Republican presidency or administration. Uh, but there are laws that, while, yeah, people are unionizing and seeking to unionize, but, there are still laws that are very much not on the side of workers, and there's a backlog with the National Labor Relations Board. All of these things prevent workers from seeing. It's the same thing that other people who live in red states, like, oh, I'm not getting this benefit, even though the benefit is available. The backlog, the lack of support from in being able to enforce the laws. It 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 leaves workers and union members feeling like, well, you say that, but I don't see it, type of thing. And so this adds to it. Um, I I really, as crazy as it sounds, I really want to say that I do feel that the strike, or strikes rather, the sit down stand up. I'm sorry, the stand up strikes of 2023, um, really did unite the workers in a way that I hadn't seen them unite before, and the fact that it was one person, one vote, and that is how Sean Fain um, won his presidency. He won that presidency. It was not a caucus, and the UAW had previously been set up in such a way that the elections kind of mirrored the United States national elections, like, or the presidential elections, where there were caucuses, which would be somewhat like what we see the electoral college as. But that's not how this past election was. This past election, the rules were changed, and the rules were changed based on a vote from the union members saying, we want one person, one vote, and they got it, and they chose Sean Fain. So that right there is significant as well. So not only is it that he's able to bring the membership together, he brought them together. That was the not the first time. They came together to actually elect him. So hopefully we see a difference, and hopefully we do get the union's support for the Biden Harris administration. I want to point out that this week, um, the UAW is in Washington D.C., and they're having their CAP conference, which is the Community Action Program. That is our political action committee arm of the UAW, where they set the political agenda for the union for the next 4 years, and it does fall during the same time as the presidential election, and it's on purpose. So while they're in DC, I do understand, and I don't know what day, but I do understand that President Biden will be attending. And hopefully that also helps to further cement that relationship between him and the union members that are present, and they can take that back to the other members who were not able to attend. Um, and and hopefully that makes a difference. So, what I keep seeing in our local paper is that the people, the community, wants to see Biden come to Michigan and actually not just on a picket line, but to, maybe a rally, maybe a town hall. I'm not sure what the plan is, but that's what I'm seeing from several people, from several politicians and leaders within the Democratic Party, saying that's what the community needs. Now, we already know he's going to be met with protests. We already know that there's going to be disgruntled people who don't want to see him, but there are many people that do want to see and hear from him, and we do have a promise from the White House that he will be in Michigan and in the community prior to the February primary election. So just wanted to point those few things out. So that was all. Sorry to interrupt the flow of things. I know we have hands.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you shared those updates and explained it. You are our union experts, so I love it when you make us smarter about these things. I have invited a few people up, Joseph and Danny. I invited up because I would love to hear her talk about a story that caught my attention. Sinclair Broadcasting buying up some legacy papers and how the effect that that has on those communities and the state of journalism writ large. And this is the danger that we're facing because we have many aspects of our access to information being hijacked. And, I'm looking forward to hearing her take on it. I have some thoughts about it, and I have a few articles that I want to share. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to some of our other speakers who I've invited up: Joseph, then Danny, and then Build Back Better. And I'm finding my information and posting some of these articles on my timeline and in the nest. I'm multitasking here because we are going toward a warming trend, but we're in Tennessee. We got a lot of snow. And our babies are not back in school today. So I am going to be dealing with breakfast and lunch. Well, I've already dealt with breakfast, but lunch and some of those things. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me as I do this and looking forward to some great conversation and information from you guys. So, Joseph, you're next, then Danny and Kim.
Hello, Ms. D. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Well, it was so much fun.
Oh, congratulations, Joseph. Sorry to
Oh
interrupt
yes,
you.
thank you, Soul Sister. Yes, well, it was a lot of fun yesterday co-hosting with Ms. D and Geechee, and I really got to have them to thank for kind of uh, uh, getting me out there and co-hosting a space. So yeah, I have an idea for a space that I would like to host, and actually I went back and listened to the space again, and now I've got had kind of a brainstorm and had something another idea come to mind. Um, Soul Sister, thanks to your talk about the unions, it actually reminded me of a couple things that I read recently. Actually, just yesterday, or it might have been this morning, I read that here in California, the California State University system, which is different from the University of California system, their union is on strike right now. I read was reading an article in San Diego that talking about one of the California State University campuses closer to San Diego that their union is on strike right now. I don't know if it's like planned for like just a day or how long, but I know this is right around the time in the California State University system that the spring semester would be starting. I'm a graduate of the California State University system, so yeah, it was usually this time in January where we would be going back for the spring semester. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, I read out of Nevada last week that the Culinary Union was picketing a couple of hotels in Las Vegas, not owned by some of the major casino players in Las Vegas, but nevertheless, they were still picketing because I believe their contract had expired. And as we know, the Super Bowl is coming up and is going to be held in Las Vegas. And I think the last thing that any of these casino operators want is a labor disruption. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because I don't know how many, possibly millions of people are expected to be in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl, but it is expected to draw a massive, massive crowd. Um, the kind of anticipating, to Danny's point a little bit, talking about like Sinclair Media, they own two of the NBC stations, both NBC stations in Nevada. They own KSNV, which is the NBC station in Las Vegas, and KRNV, which is the NBC station in Reno. And I definitely notice bias in their posting when they're talking about stories related to the administration, or sometimes they, you know, also try to have a definite pro-Trump bias in their posting. So sometimes I call them out on that, and it's important to us when we notice a definite bias in media reporting. We need to call it out, because it gives people a distorted view, and they're not telling all the facts. So as we've said many times in these spaces, that really the fourth estate has kind of failed us right now, and so it's up to all of us to kind of pick up the slack and call out what needs to be called out. Something I kind of had a brainstorm about after re-listening to the space from yesterday. A great point that Geechee brought up is that talking about counties that might be heavily or majority either Black or Latino counties in states pertaining to the presidential election, that might help tip the scale a little bit in perhaps swing states, or say for example counties that maybe we might not necessarily win, but if we can chip away enough Republican votes, that might tip the scale a little bit in our favor. I think one county that comes to mind is Apache County in Arizona, which is in the northeast part of the state. It's on the Navajo Nation, and that county was very instrumental in 2020 in helping President Biden win Arizona because of the high turnout among the Native American community. And I mentioned yesterday in the space yesterday, Santa Cruz County, Arizona, which is south of Tucson on the border with Mexico. While it's a reliably blue county, we still want to get as much turnout as possible because that can help the overall numbers in the state. There are here in California, especially in the central part of the state, there are some heavily Latino counties that in the 2022 election did not have as much turnout as we thought or hoped, and that affected a couple of congressional races. There was one congressional race for California's 22nd district that most people thought was going to go for the Democrats, but because of low turnout, the Republican won. But they're still saying that district is going to be in play this year, but we've got to get the turnout. So just a lot of things kind of occurred to me yesterday, re-listening to the space. So that's all I had to say for now. Thank you so much, Ms. D and Soul Sister, for this wonderful space. I'll keep you posted on when I'm gonna host a space. I might reach out to one of you for assistance in co-hosting, but I've got an idea that I think is going to be a great topic. So thanks so much. I'll sit back and listen to everybody else's great observations.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate you so much. And again, like I said, I feel like we're blessed to have you to be able to come and share with us. And now having your own spaces because you do travel between these three states and really are involved in the politics of them all. And it is so important for us to have I feel like a local understanding and on the ground understanding, if you will, of what's going on. Because sometimes if you're just looking at media reports and those types of things, it may not really reflect what is actually happening there from a local perspective. And another reason I'm a my brain is still kind of locked in information overload is this morning I was watching like our Democratic Party is actually filing a complaint. I'm still trying to. It's a developing story, but you know that we are experiencing the expansion of vouchers here in this state, and that's kind of a little story in and of itself because initially when they passed a few years ago it was by one vote, and there is a lot of controversy around that because the then speaker Cassida is now an indicted criminal and is said to have bribed the person who made that one additional vote. And that was at the time just for three counties in our state. And so now we have had a year of that, and now they're trying to expand it. And I talked a little bit before about the election commission, um, the education commissioner that our governor chose, and she was someone that he brought from Texas. And it's no coincidence that Texas is doing the same thing that they're trying to do here, and it wasn't very successful. And then, oh wow, I lost Danny. Hope she can come back up.
She's coming back. She couldn't hear, so she dropped out. She'll be right back.
Wonderful. Okay, but then the commissioner he brought up here was also someone who was like the director for a charter network that was started by Jeb Bush. And we find out like there are qualifications that are required for that position, and she doesn't meet the standards. And she had they had some type of committee session where she was questioned and she couldn't even really answer basic questions. So it really is very glaring. As I said, she is pretty much like the equivalent of Trump appointing DeVos, over the, education Department of Education when he was in office. Essentially, that is what our governor has done here, and Democrats are bringing that, are calling for her to resign because she literally does not meet certain educational requirements that the position calls for. So I didn't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but I'm looking forward to hearing from Danny, and then Kim, because I sent Danny this article because I read it and I was floored. There's several, but about the Boston paper being bought and the behavior of the owner, and that the owner is, from the Sinclair Broadcasting Group. So, Danny, you're up next. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, now I can.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so looking forward. Thank you for responding and
Of
accepting.
course.
Looking forward to hearing from you. So you have the floor. Please share with us your thoughts and take on the article.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Misty and Soul Sister. I don't know what happened, but it's like I just lost sound as soon as Joseph stopped speaking. But if you guys can hear me, great.
We can hear you perfect.
Beautiful. One of the first things I did want to talk about, yeah, and it was the Baltimore Sun. And it was really good reporting from PBS Hour. If you can't stomach or you can't take cable news, NPR AP, and I think PBS are still three of some of the best news reporting that you can get. And they're free. Many of their articles, if not all of them, do not have a paywall. A lot of the videos you can catch, be it on their website, being on through this app, it's always enlightening. It's always factual. I appreciate it. It's easy to understand. Um, and for the most part, they don't tend to have a bias on their reporting. They just want to get to the truth and the facts. And with Jeff Bennett questioning the young lady, you got a lot of that good reporting. And it was, the clip is about 7 minutes long, maybe. And then they also have the transcript at the bottom. So if anyone wants to look through it, I think it's
I put it in the nest.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Um, but let's talk about print media. It's one of the oldest form of journalism. It was often the one of the most reliable because before you could print anything, it had to be sourced. It had to be fact checked. It had to be backed up. It had to go before an editor. It had to be, proofread, spell checked. There was a process before you could even get it into print. And unfortunately, that is seems to be a little bit of that practice seems to be going away. And with Sinclair, and this is my this is just me being, naive. I didn't understand that Sinclair was going after all forms of journalism. I just assumed cable news and radio. It never even occurred to me that they would go after print as much as they had. And with the Baltimore Sun being the latest to be bought out, um, I believe they have a history of 187 years of
Yes.
print
Mm-hmm.
legacy. Think of how long that is. Think of the stories they've covered within that time. You think of deadly natural disasters. You think of wars. You think of corrupt government. You think of school or, elections. You think of school shootings. All of that, in many ways, is going to be lost because they are pushing for a biased reporting. They're pushing for profit to push conservative beliefs and values onto that community, onto that audience. It's not even that they have asked their audience, their membership, this is what you want. This is the direction of what a few people in power. That is what's so dangerous about it. And I applaud LA Times staffers because they walked off the job in protest. This is not how you report the news. And unfortunately, if they lose their job, that is good source reporting that's also out the window. That is no longer available to that community and that audience. And the most important part, too, is in a lot of these places, when they start pushing, the conservative values, conservative beliefs, or, conspiracy theories, well, then you create a news desert as well, because not everybody's going to buy in. And if you have a billionaire to fund it, if they lose their audience, they're still going to be okay because they're going to make their money in other ways. But that community no longer has access to reliable, evidence based, fact checked journalism. So, where are they going to get their news? And there's going to be a faction of this country that only knows what Sinclair puts out. They're not going to know a Walter Cronkite. They're not going to know the reporting of an Ed Bradley. He's my favorite on 60 Minutes when I was growing up with his little gold hoop earring.
I know
uh,
he was so cool at the time. I mean, he's still cool, but it was just really, really shocking and very cool to see
and I was
him.
sad when he died. I think it was 05, 06. Andy Rooney, that last couple of minutes of 60 Minutes, my mom was a big 60 Minutes viewer. I still am. Not so much 2020, but they also do good reporting. Um, You're not going to have a Soledad O'Brien anymore. That's going to be replaced by the Megan Kellys, by Laura Ingram. That's all they have access to, nothing different. And so they're not going to know, or they're not going to be able to discern that what's being fed to them is a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of bullshit, and it's for profit. They're looking to get you enraged. They're looking to get you angry, always being on edge, always being fearful of your neighbor. It's an old tactic, but unfortunately, it is effective. And one of the best ways to do it, especially with Sinclair, because if they own radio stations, they own print media, they own broadcasting, then you hear it all day long. And
So
there's,
it's reinforced
yeah,
propaganda. It's an
nothing,
it's a way to
exactly,
indoctrinate people.
exactly. And there's nothing to really combat that on the left, or just being neutral, because they'll just buy you out or silence you. Or then, and that's where you say, they're in a cult. They drank the Kool-Aid. Good luck trying to get those people back. Some of them are just too far gone. And unfortunately, some of them are in Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene, you cannot convince me she's not one of them. What she believes, what she pushes, mm-mm. She's not just, putting on a show for her donors. I think she is one of those people that actually believes it.
Oh, Danny, she is. Because I couldn't, no, really, seriously, I could not believe. I remember when she was running, and I thought, there's no way. She was one of the biggest QAnon supporters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were many news stories written about it. So, yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, but
No, no,
yeah.
no. And it's fine. It's fine. Um, but, and I get, print print media legacy has taken a hit. It's taken a big hit for the last 20 years or so, because the majority of the audience have moved to different forms of getting their news. But I'm sorry, I don't agree with the fact that they um, are still not needed.
D-
If
that
you are,
they just sell out. Yeah,
right,
because can I get you to stick a pin in it for a moment?
go ahead.
And it's important. You brought up a lot of things, but local papers are going to care about things that are happening there in their community more than a national conglomerate. You
Mhm.
have a gas leak, or you have a local race, like a county commission seat that deserves a runoff. And they talk about that, from a national or global level. They're not going to care about that and likely not report it. It is local reporting that exposed a recent mayoral race candidate here as a Nazi, a Nazi sympathizer at the very least, so it's so important, just not just from elections, but from, environmental protection standards, all of these things. As you said, it's a news desert that puts our local communities in a lot of danger.
Hmm. When you think about Flint, Michigan, that was local reporting. It was that community talking to radio stations, talking to their local news about what was going on with the water. And eventually, somebody from Rachel Maddow's show
Rachel, she was the first one who
yeah,
reported on it.
was listening in and decided to call about it to the governor at the time. And the governor just wrote them off, didn't respond back. And that's what made Rachel want to dig deeper. But it started at the local level. Jeffrey Epstein, one of the major reasons of why he ended up in jail was because one local reporter at the Miami Herald decided to look at his sweetheart deal that he got. And then it just opened up the floodgates of just who he was, who was all involved, and it got the case reopened. When you look at Moms for Liberty, everything that they started off locally here in Florida, if someone would have just taken the time to fully report just how dangerous and just how many similarities they share with the Daughters of the Confederate, I do not believe they would have this much power. And unfortunately, this is where groups like them thrive. Because if nobody's paying attention, nobody's going to ask questions. No one
Yeah,
reports that.
and with them, Danny, also they got help from the vast right wing media, like the non traditional ones, like the
Mhm.
podcasters, like Bannon, Beck, Alex Jones, and even Tucker, because
Mhm.
Fox basically is their propaganda arm. But they were really serving as the unofficial recruitment arm for this group.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they got so big when people started paying attention. I don't want to say it was too late, but damage was already done. They had already made their mark. They had already moved in. They had already started making strides to continue to push their agenda. And that's what makes it dangerous. And like everyone else, I was disgusted with Joy Reid. Joy Reid is someone who also started off in print media at one point, and then she went into blogging. And then she went into her weekend show, and now she's taking the slot of Chris Matthews, who used to be on MSNBC. And to kind of watch her downfall in slow motion like this, it's upsetting. And it's something that I've thought about really kind of going deeper into. But the lack of credible Black news reporting is kind of disgusting. It really is. We should be doing a whole lot better than what we're doing. This past 2 weeks or so, we kind of been going back and forth with Charlemagne the God and Angela Rye and the Joy Reads. And I'm like, this cannot be all that we have to offer. Like, this cannot be it. There are so many other good reporting, and they're kind of being drowned out by the likes of them. And we all knew it was a mistake for Joy Reid to have Moms of Liberty, one of the founders, on her show. Most of y'all were tweeting about it and eating her up in the comments about it. And then,
I mean, why platform a hate group, really? Because that is what they are.
within a day or two, not even a full news cycle, they were able to take that little snippet and do what they want to do with it. Joy Reid is questioning why there should be no, was it pornography in school? That's not what she was questioning the lady about. But you see how they spend it?
And that is what they do. And that was why I was so disappointed, because it doesn't matter. Like people were saying, oh, she really took her down. She really took her down. And it was like, it doesn't matter to Joy's audience that she fights back. The best way to fight back with them is just to do accurate reporting on them. But to platform them gives them foothold in supposedly liberal journalism and media outlets and national media outlets, which they then take and as you say, clip and churn any way they want to fit their narrative. And I knew immediately that she had won that. Like people thinking, Joy, no, Moms for Liberty won that because they got platformed by her and they were able to take it over to their right wing media, barrels and turn it up and turn it out any way they want. And of course, in their echo chamber, she was going to be heralded a warrior, a joyful warrior fighting for parents' rights.
Mm-hmm. The way that they normally spin it, because they won't tune in to Joy Reid, but they'll watch the clip of whatever Moms for Liberty puts out on their website, on their part of their site or whatever, right? And so it doesn't help. All they're going to say, oh, wow, Moms for Liberty is really fighting back. They went right at the liberals and they fought back. That is the message of how they're going to try to push it. Not that,
In their
we're going
house,
to,
basically, like she went to their house.
see, they're not scared. They're not scared. They're willing to go on the other side. Come on, y'all. And unfortunately, there are groups of people that believe in that kind of foolishness. You could say, on a grand scheme of things, that's how it was with Trump and the leader of North Korea. Why would you give that leader a platform? Why do you want to be seen with him? Because you legitimize them to a certain degree. And Joy Reid, you can't tell me she's a lot smarter than that. And so it was disappointing. And I really wish that we had more Black journalists. Um, Roland Martin can be extremely problematic, but he's decent. Um, Lindsay, I forget her last name, but she's on ABC. She's pretty good. There are others, Abby Phillips. There are others that we could tune into and maybe just kind of leave Joy, Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, just leave them on the side of the road. They're not going to get it. It's
Yeah,
they,
they've chosen profiting ahead of informing.
yeah. And I don't like saying that, but I mean, at a point, okay, you know what you're doing is wrong. This is not reporting. This is not pushing back. We don't care that that you fought back or that it, it's not
You
even.
slapped some facts upside her head like she was
Yeah.
going to take any of that in.
Oh, what? Of course she knows that. She doesn't care. She has a huge money making machine behind her that can silence you out. Can you guarantee that MSNBC is going to stand beside you? And I don't think that they will. And she has her reasons for doing what she did. It's done, but it was really disappointing. Um, to kind of pivot to go to Ron DeSantis.
Yes, because that
Okay.
is your governor.
So Ron DeSantis, the embarrassment. Ron DeSantis, who's just a waste of time and money. I don't know how much money he spent on this campaign. I don't even know combined how much he also spent on his gubernatorial race either. Um, and I don't know what you say to the donors after all this. He didn't even get a chance to make it during the primary to even see if the state would elect you or Trump because you just flamed out so quick. Um, and I applaud, I want to say the American people, but it really wasn't even the American people. It was the Republican Party that still didn't even want Ron DeSantis as their leader. And that's saying a lot. It only seems to be the Republicans and some independents here in the state of Florida that wanted that. But he was rejected large part by the Republican Party on a national level. Um, he was ill-advised. He always seemed unprepared. We used to joke that, he has another soft launch coming because
They
I don't
were
think
in their third recalibration.
he never got it right. I think Elon Musk was probably also disappointed because he helped him with that little BS soft launch here on Twitter. That didn't work out. That was an embarrassment to both Ron DeSantis, but also to Elon Musk. Um, he's clearly not ready for prime time. He's clearly not ready. We all saw that town hall with him and Gavin Newsom. And the clips I have enjoyed. I think I've liked and try to retweet every last single one of them that I come across. But he read him for the truth of what he is. He really was Donald Trump's puppet, Donald Trump's plaything. And for him to just immediately endorse him right after all of that. This is who the Republican Party want. So let them have Trump. And it'll be Trump and Biden again. And I'm here for it. um, I've often said that that the state of Florida is going through a crisis when Ron DeSantis goes ghost. Because when we need him in this state, he's never around. Um, whether it's shootings, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's storms, he's always someplace else. And it was really for his presidential campaign, and that didn't even help him. I don't know what it is. I'm sure that his wife is really disappointed. Good. Um, people call her Takio. She really thought she was going to be, the next Jacqueline Onassis. Um, that dream will never happen. I'm glad. But also to the Republicans in this state that voted for him. I don't believe that they had to be satisfied with what they saw because he had just won his election in November. And then to turn around and then start a presidential election You don't give the people, even your own supporters, the opportunity to have you as another has a have you as a governor for another 4 years, because you were so impatient to want to be president. You were so impatient to show that you could outdo Donald Trump. And this is what you're left with. Everybody's laughing at you.
And your
And
party can't keep a chairman that can't stay out of trouble.
the most, I think, his lasting impression, or his lasting legacy for right now at least, will be what he did to the state, what he did to our education system, what Republicans have tend to continue to do with healthcare in the state of Florida. Someone mentioned it, I think it was Soul Sister. Not everyone enjoys the benefits of an ACA. Florida, since its inception of ACA has passed, 2010? We've never had it. Every Republican governor has not accepted it. So all of our rates for the last, 16, 14 years now have always been high, because the governors won't let us buy into the marketplace. So that's just one area. Our property taxes, the cost of living in the state of Florida is one of the highest growing, and there seems to be no kind of relief. The fact that, they have a supermajority in the state house, so he can do and say whatever he wants. I wonder how that's going to play out now that he's a loser on the national level. Will they still feel the need to follow his command or what he wants to do? He still has another 3 years. And this is how you leave the state. This is how you leave the country. For what? Excuse me, 2 years. He hasn't, because we're in 2024 now. Yeah, another 2 years. Now, the only good thing is that he can't run for another election. You max out at 2 terms. So, I'm hoping that, Florida Democrats have really decided, on a candidate that can possibly win it back on the Democratic side. Um, but Ron DeSantis, being who he was, the American people got to see it up close and personal, and they all laughed at him and they thought he was a joke. Um, and it shows that being Trump-like does not guarantee you support. It doesn't guarantee you votes. It doesn't guarantee you money. It just guarantees that at the end, the people will choose the original. And he tried so hard to be Trump-liked, and it just didn't work out for him. I mean, you can be a conservative. You can even share, pro-life or all this other, small government, low taxes. Why isn't that no longer working? Why is that formula no longer working for the Republican Party? And I think that's what they need to ask themselves. I'm tired of seeing too many Republicans on MSNBC trying to give, advice on how the Democrats should run the party, run their elections, their primaries. Like, clean your own house first. Y'all still have a Trump issue. Was it 9 years later? Y'all haven't figured out how to wane yourself off of this man.
Well, they actually now no longer want to, Danny. I have an article I have to get around to posting, but the president of the Heritage Foundation, they want to institutionalize Trumpism. Yes, institutionalize it.
So I don't even know what to say to that. I don't know what that means for the rest of us, especially in red states, um, who like Trump and, whatever. I'm not even going to entertain that right now, because what does that mean for us? Institutional.
It's not good. I can tell you that. It's not good.
But no, Ron DeSantis, I loved all the jokes. I'm glad he's out. Um, Again, he was never going to be it. He was never going to be it. But he does serve as a cautionary tale, even if he's not it. People like him are still a danger to our democracy, because even though he did not win the Republican primary to be president, he did win in the state. And he's able to pass a lot of the stuff that he would have passed nationally at the state level. And he's just as dangerous. And other states will also look. We already know Greg Abbott is a monster. And look at everything he's passed just as governor. You would think that he's president in some kind of way because of how he runs that state. And I think that's the danger of the Ron DeSantis and the Greg Abbott's going forward, is that we also stop them at the local level, at the state level as well. And with that, I will land. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Well, thank you so very much for bringing up so many wonderful points. And I knew you could do that article justice and speak to it with the passion that you have for media. And you did an excellent job. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing your insights with us on that. And I know Susan, who is also a journalist, has some insights on it, and I can't wait for her to come and share with us as well. And up next, we've got Kim and then Susan.
Um, I had something to say, Soul Sister, but I was going to kind of follow up on what Danny was saying, or just legacy. What the thing about local press, you even see it on the difference between, say, how Rachel Maddow and even on CBS, NBC News report, and then the what I call the opinion pundits pretending to be journalists. You know, a lot of times a news story that Rachel Maddow will do a deep dive on starts from in this article in the Miami Herald, in this article in the Boston Globe, and take it from there. It's because they have the means to have people to do investigative journalism. As you were talking about with what's going on in Tennessee, you know, you have intrepid journalists who are paying attention to that. And then, you know, it captures sometimes the national media's attention, um, and the people who have done the legwork on it, who have been, you know, because there are people who have the city council beat, who have the state house beat, and they're reporting on these things all the time. Even
And,
as far,
and Kim, you're
yeah,
so right. And let me get you to stick a pin in it right there for a moment. Speaking about that, because they're trying to capture the media that they can purchase and control, and also silence the media that they cannot. Because one of the other things that our new session brought in, our new legislative session brought in, was they limited the media's access, literally. Like some of our major local reporters, as you said, were denied a place there. I mean, reporters, papers who have been reporting there for decades were not admitted into the first session because their name wasn't on the list. Okay, so go ahead and continue.
so, for example, when it comes to Moms for Liberty, I actually put up in the Nest an article for 2022 from the Tampa newspaper. What's it called? Tampa Bay. It's a local reporter telling you, hey, here's who the funding is. Here's who their dubious connections to Republicans, actual Republicans in Florida and other, you know, right wing deep money PACs as well. And how do you see this group go from 0 to 1,000 and have so many, you know, literally having Republican presidential candidates pandering to them in less than 2 years? Well, because that's not organic growth, you know. So, and so it's
Yeah, literally, their right wing media channels were like they were their unofficial recruiters.
exactly. And so what, you know, and this is what, like, so Rachel will do this. She'll start the story, she'll expand on it, and then she'll have the local journalist who started the story on there. If you wanted to talk about the Moms for Liberty, don't take Tiffany Justice, who, you know, who obviously has dubious money funding sources, intentions. Have a journalist like the guy who said, hey, here's how they get their funding, here's what they're really all about, and interview that guy, or interview somebody who's in the state who has more in-depth knowledge about them. But that's what you were, you know, even with Joy, she might have started off in print media, but once you go into the blogosphere, you get into opinion media. And that's what's becoming in punditry, basically. And that's what's becoming the replacement for people getting the news and getting information so they can form their own opinions, is being spoon-fed an opinion based on, you know, a lot of, you know, cultural war issues, or misinformation, and or a soundbite that Trump said, instead of, you know, this is why you should, you know, this is what you, here's the information. You could decide to support Moms for Liberty or not, and see them as some just grassroots organization for moms who are upset about whatever is going on in schools, or you can see them for what they really are. which is a another right wing scam with dark money and billionaire money trying to promote a certain point of view.
Right, and literally, they were very instrumental in helping, DeSantis pass his "Don't Say Gay" bill, and
Exactly.
the then he was the vice chair when they originally formed, but he later became the chair. He's also the husband of one of the co-founders, and he literally called them the foot soldiers. They were to be the foot soldiers for Ron DeSantis's campaign.
And
He
they were
said,
purpose, yeah, and they were
hmm
purposely recruiting women who had backgrounds in PR and who could speak well in public, let alone their own wives, but sometimes. So,
and
but
they also continue to train them in how to deal with the media. That is why I knew that it was also a mistake for Joy to have them on, because the second summit they had in Philadelphia, they had a media training session, which Christian Ziegler kind of spearheaded, and they have their approach. They know exactly what they're doing.
exactly. And so, to speaking of sort of dark money, fake astroturf movements, as Soul Sister brought up about the Tea Party, which is exactly what it was. And I always say that the Tea Party became into existence because we know Koch brother and other money was coming into, particularly the Midwest. It was, and always it was because of Citizen United passing, or not the case
Oh
being.
my God, I was just going to say that. Thank you.
It's the anniversary. Yes, yes.
It was, and then that was made possible. And I always say, because if you're in the Midwest, you know what happened in 2010. All of a sudden, every single Midwestern state, from Pennsylvania all the way to Wisconsin, turned red. A lot of the state houses did. Every single governorship did. The first place they targeted was a lot of the public unions. And as you were saying, Soul Sister, about infiltration that was happening amongst especially the white working class voters who are also in these unions. There was infiltration being done. These were the foot soldiers of the Tea Party, but a lot of them were white working class people who were voting against their interests and giving us these Republicans at the state houses who changed voting laws, the education systems in those states, funding as far as funding, and also try to target unions, both private and public unions. There's SB5 with in Ohio. There was what Scott Walker did. I always try to tell people what happened in 2010, and it was a reaction. It was again, it was astroturfed reaction, populist reaction to a black man becoming president on the right. But what happened was basically the Southern strategy in the Midwest,
Well,
and Trump.
they also had, much like their Project 2025, they had an initiative then to take over the state houses. It was called
Exactly.
Red Map,
Yeah.
and that is what the funding that was the funding that boosted the Tea Party into the federal um, offices,
Yeah. And
and they took over. I think it was something 20 something state houses at that
yeah,
time.
and they were able to win some U.S. House seats because of it. And just changed the dynamics of the. I live in Ohio. We're still reeling from it. At least Michigan and Pennsylvania were able to fight back against it, partly because those governors sometimes overstepped their bounds, made it too obvious what they were doing. I mean, Rick Snyder in Michigan just was a disaster. But at the
Totally.
same, and should be in jail because of it. But at the same time, but that's what I always try to make people understand, like what was happening in the Midwest, and then Trumpism is a byproduct of this too. If you take the Southern strategy and you put it in the Midwest, and instead of blaming you know, affirmative action and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and other culture wars that was going on in the South at that time, blame immigrants, blame NAFTA, and I have choice words to say about people who just economically think that was the end all be all. There were already trends in place. We need to evolve our economies. Places like Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. By the way, Biden's doing this. Biden, Harris, they're doing this, and Democrats, they're trying to expand our manufacturing base into 21st century technologies, but also expand the economies overall beyond just manufacturing and mining in these areas, so that we can have diversity of our economy that can weather the storm of changing dynamics in the economy, which is what. I mean, if you have a stock portfolio, what does your broker say? Diversify, diversify, diversify. The same thing is true of a state, of a nation. If you don't have a diversified way in which you can make wealth. Some states that suffered the most under the recessions, that have happened in recent years, or the dips that have happened, is because certain, like for COVID, it was obviously going to hit service industry. So places like Nevada are going to obviously be harmed because of it. So if you don't have a diversified enough economy, you cannot weather the storm into the 21st century. But there was all this blame. There was a lot of culture war going on, and a lot of it was set. The tone was already set by the Tea Party, who got a lot of those white working class voters to vote against their economic interests. And it was basically the Southern strategy pit to the Midwest. And again, it's the same thing that's happened. Okay, so now all these states, for a while, at least in this Midwest, but down in the South, they've had these red state leaders, but they haven't helped them. Their economies are getting worse. Their healthcare
Right.
systems are getting
It,
worse. Their education systems are not doing well. And so I wanted to point out, like, there was an actual grassroots, fake grassroots organization that made that happen. But I always think, in order to understand what was happening with Trumpism and just what happened in 2010 in the Midwest, it was just take what was going on in the South. They moved it to the Midwest. Who knows where they're going to move it next? But it ultimately hasn't helped those states at all. It's made them worse.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim. And we do have quite a few speakers up, so if you guys could kind of keep your comments to, 3 to 5 minutes. I have asked several presenters, and so I do give them a little bit more time, and Danny was one of them. So thank you so much, Kim. I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of wrap your thoughts up, and you don't have to go anywhere, but I do have
That's it. I mean,
some
also
others.
Florida would be an example of what that looks like. If you take those red state policies, the culture wars that create
Exactly.
give the a certain president, a governor, a chance to run, and a certain city legislature a chance to do their thing, and then just in a few short years, watch Florida flounder economically because of it. They're anti woke, made them go broke.
It really, really did, and it's also creating a talent drain, and we're experiencing the same thing here in Tennessee with the medical providers and teachers because of these anti-woke measures that they're instituting, because Tennessee, like DeSantis and Florida and Texas, they get a lot of national attention with their extremist legislation, but they are doing the same thing. And you guys know, I tell people here, they are doing the same thing here in Tennessee. And many times Tennessee has already enacted these things very quietly. Like, our governor is not loud and crazy like Abbott and DeSantis, but he's doing the same thing because it is part of their agenda. It is the overarching agenda of Project 2025. And in these states where they have that GOP trifecta, that some of them are quietly going about bringing it to fruition. Others like to do it more performatively, and they're the ones who get the media attention, like DeSantis and Abbott. So again, thank you so much. Always love to hear your take and insights on things that are occurring, and I love like, for me, that's how it works, that you connect the dots to things in our past, and that's important for me to help me understand. And so I always appreciate you bringing that to the conversation. And again, I hope you don't go anywhere, but we do have a few more hands up. And that would be Susan, and then Geechee and Noah. Noah, I see you here. Are you out of school today? Or you, okay, good. All right. So I just wanted to know, maybe you were on lunch break or whatever. I know we're out of school here and you're south of me. So, all it takes is a little bit. So I'm looking forward to hearing you here in the space today. I've heard you and others and just very impressed with you. But we're going to go with our speakers in this order. That would be Susan, Geechee, and Marie, who is new to the space, and then Noah. So you guys, go ahead, Susan.
Hi, hello, happy Monday, everybody. I
Hi.
thank you for bringing me up. I promise to be really short because I have a script deadline today for a client, so I will talk really fast.
I know, and that's why, but I am always honored when you come and speak, because I know that you're busy working, but you're a journalist and I'd love to have your
Yeah,
insight.
I don't know that I'm really a journalist. I work for pay now for clients mostly. Most of them are nonprofit clients.
You have the experience, so you
Yeah, in my
understand
background,
it.
but now I'm a
Yes.
writer for hire and producer for hire, mostly nonprofits, but today happens to be a corporate client. And that's also why I have to be a little bit careful about just how I speak
How
online
you? Mm-hmm.
because
I
I'm a
understand.
freelancer, independent contractor, and I also sometimes work with public universities and that sort of thing. So that's why I aim most of my darts at the press and journalism, talk about quality journalism. So I love that I heard Danny today. Love everything she says every time. So I'm just going to underscore a few things. We get really mad, of course, with the frustration of the news marketplace. I won't belabor all of that. We've gone over it many times. It's predominantly white, male managed. It has been for decades. We still see the outcome in story selections, story framing, just so many things. And although we see more diversity in on camera, the faces they put in front of the camera, a lot of the key decisions, headlines written, what stories are promoted, that is still predominantly while white men are making those decisions, and it shows in the outcome, whether they intend to or not. I believe it's a mix. These things are very complicated. And there's just so many cultural layers and dynamics and politics and trying to remain financially sustainable that go into these outcomes. So it's never just one thing. It's a recipe of things. But here's the bottom line. We need good journalism to survive. And to be honest, I listen to a lot of podcasts and more on the business side of media and the business side of the news marketplace as well. And some of them, they're infuriating to listen to. Like I listen every day to Puck News's podcasts and that sort of thing because it's more the business side of it. And it's very much, like the hosts that come on there and that sort of thing. It's very much the white bro. I can just, hear it. But I feel it's important for me to stay in tune on what their thinking is about the business aspect of it, because right now there is huge shrinkage in the sector. I've said before, the Washington Post is set to lose $100 million this year. So while they still have influence and while they're still important and we still get mad at them, um, we need quality journalism to survive. We need them because New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, Punchbowl, Puck, while we get mad at them, they have reach and scale. And I also know that there are very good journalists like Eugene Daniels, Heidi Prisbilla, among many others that are working within these newsrooms that are dealing with the politics themselves of trying to put out good journalism, and they're trying to feed their families. They're trying to build their career. And we all know what that's like when you work in, and every newsroom has different cultures. And I would just say some of them are worse and some are better. Even in really large corporations, from department to department, you've got better managers and you've got worse managers. There's so many layers to this. So when my strategy has been, there's a lot of people coming at journalists from all sides. You've got the Trumpian MAGA version, which is saying everything's fake news. Don't believe anything that you hear, and they're leveraging that to their advantage. Um, and so that also hurts us on our side when we do see quality reporting come out from some of the large newsrooms. Then that their power to cut through is diminished. Um, so and I've said this many times, engagement metrics are the currency in the news marketplace. That apps, so yelling at them online isn't going to do anything. And I understand why they get prickly about hearing any criticism, even when it's valid criticism, because they get in a defensive mode a little bit. I had an interaction with Jeff Stein with the Washington Post, who's an economic reporter, and I made a comment, a reply, and I'm very careful to not say, you suck, or, whatever. I just don't, because I know they won't read my comment at all.
Yeah, it's hard for people to listen to you after you've yelled at them and called them
Yeah, so
names.
so I'm being really specific here about specific people. I know that there's, I'm not trying to tone police anybody else or who you want to call out. because every situation is unique. But for one reply I made that was somewhat critical, he just blocked me, and I'm a subscriber. And I actually, found his work email, and I emailed him one-on-one. And I said, "Why did you block me?" I said, "I am a subscriber, and I just made a single comment, and it was calm, it had evidence, and I believe that we need, big newsrooms to succeed and be a check on authority and that sort of thing." And he ghosted me, and I asked him again. I said, "Why did you block me?" Because I for some reason it just really bugged me. And then he unblocked me, and since then, I've made a point to, when he's reporting on positive economic news and stuff, I go retweet him and that sort of thing. And it's just a small little example of my long. Okay, I said it'd be short, so I got to wrap it up. But here's
No, take your time, Susan. Take your time.
here's what I would like to do this year somehow. I would like to start putting together a Google Doc, maybe, that is shared amongst a collection of us who want to take a different strategy and want to make sure we amplify quality reporting. Because
I love that idea.
a number of us do subscribe, and I subscribe to I donate to nonprofits like 19th News and Mississippi Free Press and Native Online and some other nonprofit newsrooms I like to support, but I also pay for some of the larger reach and scale ones as well. And so if those of us who do have them, and we use our 10 free gift links a month, and we start pasting these gift links into a Google Doc or whatever, there can be some of us that intentionally go out and really try to share the news that we, because I just think if we share what's truthful, we know the truth is on our side. We know the facts are on our side, and it's just really hard to get truth and facts, and especially positive news. It's incredibly difficult to get any positive news to cut through in this noisy news marketplace. And also the other thing is, like, tabloids use all these tactics of repeat, and there's no paywall. And better quality reporting is more nuanced, it's more complex, it's usually behind a paywall, and it's a little bit more one and done sometimes. So any positive news, like, well, we covered that. And so there's just so many things against us in terms of trying to help truth and facts, and the fact that when good public governance is getting done, number one, it either isn't covered at all, or if it is, it's one and done, and it just doesn't cut through in a noisy news marketplace. So if we could put a collection, if we could get a Google Doc going, and anytime anybody notices positive news, and especially if it's a no paywall link, or it's from PBS or Reuters or AP or these other newsrooms that don't have paywalls, and then those of us who have subscriptions can paste the gift links in there. I've explained before, if you copy and paste a gift link from the browser and repaste it, it stays as a gift link. And so, but you do have to do
Yes.
the copy and paste method.
And I love that you shared that with us, and I use it. And I kind of created my own list of free of gift articles so that I could reuse them over and over again. But I like um, um, your idea of kind of forming a group of us to have that resource that we can share and use, because and we know that we are being flooded with propaganda. It's the fire hose technique that they're using on us, on the population. So my thinking is that we need to create our own fire hose of truth, and this would be one way of doing that. So I love it.
Two quick comments to wrap up. One of them is on the Joy Reid platforming the Women for Moms for Liberty. I will say there's not a fast rule about whether somebody goes and speaks on your enemy media. It's a case-by-case basis. It 100% depends on the skills of the person. So I'm not against anybody speaking on behalf of Biden, Harris, or Democratic Party values going on Fox News. It just depends on who it is. It has to be the person who understands their tactics of how they take phrases out of context and twist them.
Like Newsom.
Yes, so you have to understand that every answer you say um, is can stand alone and can't be edited out of context, and that takes a lot of skill that only a few people have. So in some cases, I think it's great to go on enemy media, but you have to have a high level of skill to do it. And a lot of people don't have it. And I'm not against platforming somebody terrible, but that also I'm usually more against that versus going to be a guest on enemy, what I call enemy media, the opponent's media. But again, it has to be in such
It,
a way that because you have to understand what they're going to do with the clips. And you can't just allow them to create content that they're going to exploit and leverage for their purposes. And it just takes a lot of skill to prevent that from happening in what happens with the content after. Because most people are not watching things live anymore. They're seeing clips edited out of context. And I can't even remember what my third one is, but I have to kind of run. I'm going to listen for a little bit while longer, and then I'm going to try to buckle down and make some of my own money.
I hear you. Well, we want you to be able to, feed the family. In real life happens for all of us. So, again, thank you for taking precious time out of your day to come and share, your insights and expertise in that area. And I totally agree with your approach, and that is the approach that I've taken. So it makes me feel good to know that someone who really, really does understand this, media and journalism that I'm doing, and my approach is a good approach to be able to, affect change. And I agree with you as well with going into, as you said, your opponent's field to report, but or to to speak, and that it does take skill. My problem with Joy and the Moms for Liberty is that they are a hate group. To me, it was no different than them, her platforming a Klan member. Like, do we really need to have them there to know what they're about? And I really equate them to the same
Oh,
thing
Dee, I
because
remembered, you just helped me remember my last point, and it's exactly what you're talking about. Could you mind if I just wrap it up? I mean, I'm so sorry to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead.
Okay.
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
I agree with you 100%. There is a difference to booking like a Republican or a candidate Republican versus a hate group. So that's a very fair distinction, and I'm glad you made clarified that. The other thing I will say is we talked earlier about stoking hate and grievance as a way to generate engagement metrics because that's an easy way to generate clicks. There's a lot of people working in leftist media, what I call the attention economy, um, that use the same tactics. Now, I don't believe leftists are as dangerous as the far right in any shape or form, so I'm not putting a false equivalence on that. But in talking about the tactics they use to generate clicks and engagement metrics, it's that can there's some similar tactics going on there, which is you should be really pissed off about whatever, fill in the blank, because it generates this visceral reaction and stoking you're a victim, uh, grievance, you should be pissed. All of that is just very much a click generating tactic. And if that's just part of media literacy and news literacy skills that I hope we get into our educational systems, is that if somebody's telling you all the time that you should be pissed off about something, then maybe they're just more interested in counting their engagement metrics for their revenue and their pocketbook versus caring about the substance of public governance and the outcomes from public governance, which there's a huge difference. And hopefully we can get audiences to discern when those tactics are being employed on them. Thanks.
All right, absolutely. Thank you again so much, and I hope that the rest of your day is awesome. So up next we have Geechee, and then Noah, Norby, and I invited Davina. I'm so glad that she was able to join us today. I always love to hear from her. So we'll go in that order.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for yesterday, and thank y'all for hosting this space again today. Y'all always do a wonderful job. I'm just asking if we can have a moment of silence. Martin and Coretta's youngest son passed, Dexter King. prostate cancer. If we could just give a 30-second maybe moment of silence, if you don't mind. Okay. Thank you very much for allowing us to do that. I really don't have a lot today. We're going to be starting a general election earlier than I think anybody wants. I believe this election is going to probably be over this week, sometime this week, when Nikki Haley gets the doors blown off her in New Hampshire tomorrow, and then we guess we're starting the general election. I would rather these general elections start in the summertime, but here we are with a general election that's starting in February, basically. And Biden's campaign is out today with ads that are definitely campaign ads boosted at Trump, because basically the Republican primary will be over tomorrow. Um, it's going to be an interesting time. I just want people to be safe, especially if you're in red states with these clowns that are empowered by Trump. And that's really all I have. Just keep hope alive, be prayerful, and be happy. And I'm going to continue to listen. Thank you very much for the space.
Well, thank you so much as well. I appreciate you. And we lost Noah. Maybe he can come back. But up next, then I think would be Norby, and then Davina.
Hi guys. I wanted to just take a quick question. I wanted to know if I could ask Miss Bordson a question, and that was, I noticed that David Smith, who is the head of Sinclair Media Group, they basically made like an umbrella corporation to include all their different divisions of media and sports, etc., that they cover. But he specifically was from Baltimore. He specifically himself, as I understand it, bought the Baltimore Sun, and it's really sort of a revenge piece here because Baltimore Sun came out with a very good in-depth article against Sinclair back in, I want to say, May, and then he began trying to buy them out. And I just feel like this is a really key point that I wanted to understand. I study this a fair amount, and I just wanted to see if she had an answer.
I mean, what's your question? I mean, it sounds like you brought us some information, good information, because I did read that. So what's your question to her? She is still here, and so she
I'm
may
sorry.
be able.
My question to her was, do you see this as an individual buy and attempt to break down and destroy the Baltimore Sun, because it is a strong, independent, semi-independent media excellent source? It really has always been. Sacramento Bee, Texas Tribune, a lot of these newspapers that still, Miami Herald, they still have these great um, journalists. I guess my question to you is, he did not buy this underneath Sinclair. Do you see an ulterior motive behind this, or am I reading too much into this?
No, I would say that's a pretty accurate read, but the fact that he is still part of the Sinclair broadcasting, I see it much as like Trump being motivated to run for the presidency after Barack Obama made a few jokes at his expense, because I find that the right leaning, they're very vengeful. I mean, he's running on a retribution campaign. So I can't remember. Danny is up here, and I sent her the article too, and I know she's read it. Did you gain any of that out of the article? As like, I didn't get into the actual finances of it, but it's a great question, Norby. And if we don't get the answer for you immediately, we will get it for you, because I don't know the dynamics of the actual, financing part of it.
Well, if I could mention one more thing, they finally did get fined by the FCC for, like, I don't know, $42 million. No big deal to them at all as the media group. But they are kind of topping out at their limit and their range. They can only be within X number of miles of each other, of all the stations that they own. But the fact of the matter is, it all goes back to deregulation, and that we need a strong SEC, we need a strong FTC, we need a strong FDA, we need a strong USADA. We need all of these agencies with oversight, because there's no way that we can deal with all of the issues that our nation has on a 50 state corrupt layers, 50 layers of greed and corruption state run United States. It cannot happen. And that's exactly why they want to do it. And they want to divide us. They want the deregulation. And to me, the most important issue right now are the two Chevron cases that are up in front of SCOTUS. There can be nothing more important than that right now.
Yes, and I asked Mark to talk to us about it, and I know that he's in here, so I hope that he will come up because you're absolutely right. And this is also the part that keeps tripping me up because this agenda and this desire is all throughout the Project 2025 agenda. Like this deregulation, it covers everything because it's how they move and behave. Like for instance, when President Obama was in office and he made I don't know, a law that federal prisons would no longer be ran by nonprofits.
Yeah,
Okay. So here in our state, there is a law, that they can't, they can only have so many, but they work around that. They get around it by allowing each county to, to work with them, and then therefore it's not considered state funds. So I see them working in the same way, probably to avoid
sure.
what regulations do exist. But that's an aspect that that you've piqued my curiosity, and
Well,
I
then
follow.
you've also got to back and look at who's Blackburn's original biggest sponsors were, and
Hmm.
Sessions within the first 2 months of the Trump presidency had privatized a whole bunch of prisons, opened up a whole bunch of privatized prisons that were all set up and ready to go to
Yes,
fill up
because
with the pipelines. But what my point is that sometimes we've got to draw back the lens and say, look at the bigger picture. Okay, they've had this plan in action for 40 years. Each of these cases that have come up to dissemble our individual freedoms and our community freedoms in light or in lieu of state rights. Our communities have all lost power to be able to regulate. Like the one place in Texas, okay, Dallas, we have a judge here. He was very fair. He was trying to do COVID things, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Abbott and Paxton just ran him over. You know what I'm saying? But our community rights have been taken away, from what trees we can save to what we can do within our communities, have all been usurped by people like Abbott. And then they want to take the power away from the federal government. And then you see them passing these child labor laws. You see them doing all of these things to put key cases in front of their preordained, prepaid SCOTUS to get these things done. And I think if you look at Reagan as a shill, he didn't know shit about trickle down economics. They had to train him up to go on TV and read the script. He's exactly like Trump in that way. And if we spend too much of our time simply looking at Trump as a monster and the megalomaniac that he is, fine, he is. And he is the danger. But the true danger is the plan that's been in place since the 80s. And if you can't draw back the lens and see that and the whole idea of the wealth divide brought about by the trickle down economics, which was always a theory, never ever a workable system of economics. And if you look at ALEC and the pipeline of these cases to go in and niggle and break away and disseminate and disintegrate our individual rights, and we're losing our first, our fourth, our fifth, our all these other rights, but all they want to do is tout about the Second Amendment, but yet people aren't paying attention to right now. Texas has become a stop and ID state. That's your First Amendment right. You should not have to. That's seizure of your identity. That's seizure of your property. And
yeah.
that's what we're losing one by one by one. But people don't see this. So I'm going to shut up. But I would love an answer if you get it from Miss Bordston in terms of what she thought about how Mr. Smith is handling this outside of sort of the Sinclair group.
Hmm.
It really worries me a lot because they are so powerful and they own, you know, most almost anybody that listens to radio and TV is getting.
Sinclair News. Yes.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
absolutely red stamp or
And yeah,
stamp.
and
Yeah,
Exactly. And I mean, I appreciate you brought some great points up, but that's exactly what we do here in advocacy arena. Like we don't just take the sensational stories or the aspects. We're always connecting the dots, and we know that the dots always connect back to the dark money donors. And, so, that's what Project 2025, is about, and how it connects to all of our rights and how long they've been working on it. Because I don't know if you were here last week when I talked about like Project 2025, we know, is subsedes the mandate for leadership, but there was something before that. There was the conservative manifesto, which dates back to the 1930s. So it's a plan, like you said, and they don't have to. I love how you said, they trained Reagan in the lingo, and essentially that's what Project 2025 is all about. Like. We cannot forget that in connection with the Project 2025, they have the Presidential Training Academy. It is designed basically to train a force of loyalists to help him carry out and or her, because they really don't care, and it doesn't matter who it is. If it's a Republican, they will be using this blueprint to take away all of our rights, and that is the big umbrella over all of it. And, while Heritage Foundation is the author and penned this, we can understand and know that they are but one tentacle of the Council for National Policy, which is the big umbrella. And, Heritage Foundation is the think tank part of it. ALEC is the bill writing mill part of it. And then Donors Trust is the ATM of it all. Like they dish out the money, excuse me, the frog in my throat, to all the organizations. But this is what we come together every week to do, to talk about the news, the stories, how it affects us, how it relates in a larger overall vantage point, even globally.
No,
So
I
because
absolutely I hear you, and I just wanted to mention one more thing at the beginning of the hour. You said something along the lines of um, the news people were coming out and the media alert Democratic groups media things were coming out this morning about Roe v. Wade, and that I hope you know that today is the anniversary of when it actually was put
yes,
into
we
effect from
started our
Curtis.
space saying that. Yes, we
I know,
should.
and that's I came in on that, but I didn't know if you actually realized that today was that anniversary, and that's why that news is coming out. That's why Kamala is over in Wisconsin with Gretchen Whitmer, et cetera. So just didn't hear that end part of it. I came in as soon as I could, but I didn't hear you actually say that you knew that this is the anniversary. And I know we don't want to hit just hot, topic kind of buttons, but and yes, I listen a lot. A lot of times that you don't know I'm here, but I'm actually listening a fair often. But thank you so much, and I'm going to step down.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yes, my fabulous co host did start us out acknowledging that it was the actual anniversary. And and we know that this is one of the initiatives that the vice president has. So thank you again. I appreciate you. And up next, we have Davina and then Marie, and correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Davina, how are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for asking. Well, mostly good. Um, Lovely listening to everybody, and um, yes, I'm sorry as well for the passing of Martin Luther King's youngest. Is it youngest son? I'm sorry to get that wrong. Um, yes, what's my take today? I always have something to say about fascism, but I'm just enjoying that Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the race because he was trying to illustrate that he could out Trump, or that he could be an imitation and a different model, or a more respectable Trump model without the criminal baggage. And so for me, the upside is it underlines the fracturing of the Republican Party. I mean, everybody always fractures. Political parties are a group of disparate individuals squished together under an ideological umbrella, and so obviously not a monolith in for either party, but this is a significant fracturing for them. Because there's some of them that perceive Donald Trump has significant criminal liability, criminal exposure, and that he lacks principles, tried to overthrow American democracy. Some of them dimly recognize it. I've seen comments from people on, more prestigious American Republican publications like the New Republic or some, not the New Republic, I can't remember what it was, but I was reading all these very wordy, somewhat erudite Republican comments, and they were like, "Yes, well, even though obviously the criminal cases are pushing it or trying too hard or partisan motivated, there's something there." And I thought, well, they're so close to getting it, and the fact that some of them do feel like that indicates a degree of split resolve. They can't all bring themselves to vote for Trump. And in 2016, he was even then when he lost the popular vote and had to be helped by Russia, even then he was still only a known entity as far as manufactured reality television goes, where his success was manufactured, his boardroom furniture was rented to make him look fancy, and he still only just won the electoral college vote and not the actual popular vote. So now he is more of a known entity. His ability to cultivate a fascist cult following, whereby he postures as a strong man and trains people to detach themselves from reality and evidence by saying that he's the only solution and he's the only source of truth, and they can sort of abandon logic in exchange for the dopamine hit, for the glee of feeling themselves capable of violating all sorts of rules and social norms with impunity because he does it. He was their he was their mascot for being racist in public, self-interested in public, violating social norms which they may have just felt compelled to subscribe to or to hide their racism, and then they're like, no, we don't have to, we can say we believe in that the status quo should be preserved and defended, that there should be a continuation and an extension of white dominance, and nobody should make amends for slavery, there should be no reparations and no affirmative action and no diminution of our inner convictions that white people are superior and morally righteous, and therefore we were never wrong in the first place with regards to slavery and Jim Crow. That he helped feed them the Kool-Aid to sustain their own prior convictions of white
Right, the
supremacy.
lost cause
Yes, yes.
ideology.
In that way, he's the neo-Confederate mascot for so many, whether they admit it to themselves or not. And so I can see Tim Scott proposing to his girlfriend in the hope that Donald Trump will pick him for VP because he thinks, oh, that will help sustain that delusion to them. They can tell themselves they're not racist if he picks me as the VP. But I don't think that's likely to happen, Tim Scott. So good for your girlfriend for running with anyway, I shouldn't make fun of somebody else's engagement when I don't really know that much about them personally. It seems a little questionable. And that's all I'll have to say today. I'll land my plane, except to sign on to endorse Susan's idea of a Google document where we share our Washington Post or whatever subscriptions we have, free links, because, oh, and I want to steal what Dee said as well, as a title for something, Fire Hose of Truth, because that's a nice rallying cry to counter the fire hose of falsehood that is one of the hallmarks of fascist movements, which is they try and just muddy the waters, make so many accusations to cover their own tracks, so that when you bring up their actual crimes, they're like, oh, yeah, well, I've heard similar accusations against you. And it just reassures their own supporters that all of it's not really worth worrying about. All of these accusations are just partisan back and forth, and the real important thing is that Donald Trump is still the fountain of truth and a fighter for them who will unleash all of the worst impulses of human nature on their behalf, because fascism not only feeds an appetite for violence, it creates it, it sustains it, and it catalyzes it further. So that's why it's always a movement that you've got to be vigilant against and work hard with the people who are aware of what a danger it is to find whatever strategies work. And I think Eric Swalwell said fascism can only be defeated with unity. And I thought, oh, unity sounds like a big stretch, but what he does mean is people working together. And so that's why we have this forum. Thank you, Dee, for hosting Advocacy Arena. Thank you for providing a space for us to find that unity, that collective action impulse generator machine that is this space. Thank you. And that's all from me. I'm on board as always.
Well, thank you. Yes, I hope that catches on because that's exactly what we do, what they do, and we need to use the tactic, but use truth. So, I appreciate you mentioning that. And we do have Mark up. I'm so glad that he's able to join us because earlier in the week, I asked him to take a look at the Chevron case. And I know, his legal expertise, he's looking at a lot of things. So I'm looking forward to him bringing, some updates on the legal front to us. But before you, Mark, I've got Marie, or tell me if I'm pronouncing it correct, who is a new speaker here.
Yeah. Hey, Dee. I just wanted to say hello. I heard you speak in Mr. Stewartson's room, and you brought up something that piqued my interest. Um, I'm dealing with a lot of country real estate, and you had brought up some topics in your header about very interesting details. I guess you guys are talking about how journalism will be thrown out the window with Agenda 2025. In my opinion, some writers are miracle workers, some investigative journalists, in my opinion only, are angels. Um, I'm Democrat, I'm not far left. I work a lot. D, I'd like to ask you some questions, but it's okay. It's too detailed. I do want to ask Dee just your opinion on something. Um, and just to tell you a little bit about me, I own 4 acres in the middle of 1,000 acres of gas wells in northern Arkansas. It's a story and it's a book. What would you consider a small town, D? Because a lot of these towns in northern Arkansas, and please, everybody, if you buy any country land, I'm telling you right now to guard your land deeds, especially with moms of liberty with their families running the counties. We'll just put it that way. But just before I leave, because I've got so much mail to get out, Dee, what would you consider to be a small town? Because I see a lot of towns with 2 to 300, and then bigger towns with 5,000 to 10,000. So just off the cuff, Dee, and listen, what you said. I don't want to repeat your story, um, but you had talked about a community of, we'll just call them cowboys. I I love everybody, you guys, but we'll just say country bumpkins buying up a bunch of land, country land, and but what would you consider to be a small town? 2 to 300, 5,000 to 10,000, and again, I'm going to tell you,
Yeah, I
D.
mean, a small town can even be up to 40, thousand or what. I hope that helped you out. But that's just Dee's opinion there. But I
You
appreciate,
You really think 40,000? Okay, that's a kind of a bigger small town, but wow. Okay,
yeah,
no, I'll shut up, girl. You're thinking bigger than I am. I was thinking 5 to 10,000, and then the next
no,
bigger cities. But
no.
yeah,
Yeah, I grew up in a small town and it was actually kind of double that size, but it's still a small town. So it just the local level. I mean, every state has their maps, and the little counties have several cities within them, and then the counties make up the states, and some are more
Yes,
rural than others, but yeah, like most of Tennessee, like much like Germany, there are only a few large cities there. Mostly it's made up of small
yeah.
communities and towns. And, our
ab-
country, our state is very much the same way.
Where do you think all these cowboys are buying up the land? Do you think it's in
Well,
towns or?
Marie, that's a question I will DM you and ask you and talk to you about this offline. So I love keeping our conversations focused and, the topic.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
So thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming in. But we can have a chat, in the DM about it. But I want to keep us on topic here. And I
Thank,
appreciate you
thank,
joining us.
Thanks for explaining all the small details to this because it is overwhelming. And as I have told those Republicans, you Democrats are much better at research than they are. And you guys know a lot more about things than they do. They don't do good research. Let me shut up.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. And up next, we have Mark.
Hey, hey, soul sister. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. So glad
Uh,
you were able to fit us into your schedule today, sir. I know you have a lot to share.
yeah. I went from listening to the Fannie Willis hearing and debating some of my colleagues, and then also I'm glad you asked me that question about. I heard another speaker ask about Chevron, and I know you mentioned it earlier this week. So, we've known about Chevron, the Chevron doctrine since 1984. So, um, and I think that if you've listened to Advocacy Arena and you've listened to D&I's discourse and even watched the podcast that she does, we kind of talked about where the Supreme Court was going to make their mark, where we're going to feel 6-3 over and beyond Roe versus Wade. So this is the kind of case right here that you're gonna start to feel the power. I guess I'm thinking of Star Wars in my mind. The power of the dark side, right? You're gonna start to feel the power of the court and its 6-3 majority. And think about ultra conservatism, wanting to shrink the government, and what that entails, and also what the consequences of that are. Because people are actually going to feel this, just like they felt Roe versus Wade. Um, we are going to feel this too if they decide to overturn the Chevron doctrine. Let's go back a little bit and let me be a little bit more professorial with regard to what we talk about when we talk about the Chevron doctrine. It comes from a 1984 Supreme Court case called Chevron USA versus Natural Resources Defense Council, and it established the legal principle that we call Chevron deference, or we call it the Chevron doctrine, right? But it's legally called the Chevron deference. Um, it's a framework on how the court should handle involving federal agencies' interpretation of laws, because a lot of times Congress doesn't like Congress doesn't Congress doesn't make laws and outline every single thing that has to happen with regard to the agency. So there's a lot of room for interpretation when it comes to groups like the Equal Employment Opportunity, EEOC, and some and the federal, the Environmental Protection Agency, and these agencies have a lot of power to do things to advance the purpose or their mission with regard to how they interpret the laws and how they affect the laws or exact the laws. And so the Chevron doctrine is really a two-step process. First, the court looks at a if there's a challenge, the court will look at a statute, and if it's clear, they'll just follow the intent of Congress. We usually don't. I mean, those kind of cases result in quick. You can't. For instance, you can't. You don't need really the. You need EEOC approval, but after if someone says get out, in your office, calls you the N word, boom. I mean, you're going to have a lawsuit pretty quick. So that kind of abridgment of one's civil rights is pretty clear. But the second prong of the Chevron doctrine, if the statute is ambiguous and the court under the Chevron doctrine would defer to the agency experts with regard to how they interpret that and not interfere in that interpretation. So why this matters? Because there's three things: the balance of power between the branches of government, um, ensures that specialized agencies can effectively interpret and implement complex regulations without extensive litigation, which is pretty solid, and also predictability and stability with regard to when an agency says something, what's going to be done. If the impact of overturning the Chevron doctrine would affect areas like environmental regulation, healthcare, labor laws, civil rights, and issues that concern equal rights, equity, and actually justice. I mean, if the Supreme Court, the 6-3 Supreme Court overturns the Chevron doctrine, which is which is pre prime precedent. No court has even considered overturning it until this court, which is another consequence of the 2016 election. We're going to see increased judicial activism, and that's why the reason why I said this is where the 2016 election hurts is because not only was Trump able to get 3 Supreme Court justices at the highest court, right, but he installed a lot of lower level federal justices where these cases are going to go. We have Kazmarek down in Texas, where companies are actually, forming in his district just to file lawsuits to run up to the fifth district through him, and you can bet your bottom dollar, like in Annie, right, that Kazmarek is going to get a lot of these agency cases. It's going to challenge our legislature because a lot of these statutes are vague, and we don't have the type of legislature that we have a divided government. We don't have the type of legislature that's really going to advance any kind of agency power with regard to co- coalition between the two parties. Also, it's gonna muck up regulations altogether. So overturning the doctrine is going to have severe impacts. And like I said, the federal agencies that play a role in enforcing laws and regulations related to equal rights, equity, and civil rights, the courts will no longer defer to the agencies' interpretations, and it can lead to more rulings and before more conservative judges with regard to enforcement of those laws. Like I said, it's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights that establishes these guidelines on civil rights at your workplace and in your daily life, and also consumer protection agencies that that decide how companies are price gorging or anything like that. Those are going to all of a sudden be in the courts. And so overall, the impact of overturning Chevron is going to affect regulation as far as how big companies are monitored, but they're also going to affect equal rights, equity, and civil rights, like I discussed. And it will you know it's going to largely depend on this 6-3 court. Obviously, it's a 6-3 court, so I'm not sure how the court is going to be divided. I think Roberts is, it's actually kind of funny when we think about it, because I think Roberts, for some reason, he he is the new Breyer, or he's the new Kennedy, where he's the moderate voice that we have, and that's how bad it's gotten. That Roberts is our moderate voice in the Supreme Court. So it's probably going to be a 5-4 decision. I'm not sure if Alito is going to go for overturning the Chevron doctrine, and only because of his commitment to preserving native land rights and Native American rights of indigenous people. every ruling that he sides with the liberals on has to do with pretty much with Native American rights. So he's really strong on that. So, that's kind of like what the doctrine is in a nutshell. I try to summarize it as much as possible without having to get into all the weeds while people are pouring ice around me. But, I hope that made you understand how important this decision is, but also, regardless of what the Supreme Court decides, how impactful voting for a president is. And it's pretty much the only thing that matters in voting for a president are just the direction of the federal government and resources where they pivot, and also our justice system, the kind of justices that you want deciding things like this. So, as far as policy and things of that nature, we are a representative constitutional republic. If you have a problem with U.S. policy, the first order of business is to talk to your representative. The president is going to enact the same, pretty much same policies in general speaking than the last four presidents. I'm talking about like issues like in Israel. You're not going to change U.S. policy through presidents. Will in large part, I mean, it's some specifically, but like for instance, when Trump was withdrawing from Afghanistan, Biden withdrew. The promises that Trump made, Biden had to keep. He had to withdraw, but he actually was got an extension. So that's an example of policies like that are broad, not changing through terms. As a matter of fact, Trump didn't really change anything, but Obama did. He just basically talked shit about Obama, but did the same thing Obama did. He was like, "Hey, it's working." Obama did great. Privately, he was saying, "I got this great economy. I'm gonna make it mine." But that's what every president does, though, right? Except for Joe Biden, who got a horrible economy and made it great. So, and like I just saw a tweet of Marsha Blackburn. I'll close here, where she said that Joe Biden is messy. He's mucked up. Muck is like my favorite word. He's mucked up oil energy production in the United States. In fact, the United States oil and gas industry is producing more than ever before. Our green economy is the best in the world. We produce more oil than any country in the world. So
In history. In
in
history.
the history of
and
the
and
of the world,
and the
right?
industry had substantial profits as well.
Correct. Yeah, a company's not going to lower prices to benefit the people. They're going to make as much money as possible because we're in capitalism, right? The profit margin is everything. Every decision that's made in corporate has to do with margin. Those of us that work for big conglomerate and global companies know that everything you do is on the margin. So, and it's not saying it's fair. It's not saying it's right. But the reason why gas prices are high, with production being that high, is because of the profit margin. It's the amount you're willing to pay to fill up your gas tank. If it's $2.30, that's what they're going to charge. If it's $5.30 in California, that's what they're going to charge. If you stop buying gas in California, the price will go down. So that's the idea of the electric car. But electric cars have some other issues. But I'm saying that's the idea of it, and also the climate crisis is an idea, is something that have to consider as well. But consumers dictate prices, supply and demand. One of these days we're going to talk about that because I have an economics degree, so I need to put that to use sometimes here.
Yeah, you guys need to have a space on that sometimes because here I think it's important that people have a broad overview and understanding of it, but it takes time and nuance for that to be broken down in bite-sized chunks for people to be able to take in. So I don't like to get too wonky in certain topics here in the space.
I
So
got, I got, I
yeah, but
got you, D. I was just kidding. I'm not going to get wonky in economics because actually, I mean, it's a boring conversation if when you're a Keynesian going against a Milton Friedman. Somebody said trickle down from Reagan. That's Milton Friedman philosophy. Supply side economics versus Keynesian. We're not going to get involved in that. So I'll just stick to my Thurgood Marshall sound bites and keep on providing. Informed information, or excuse me, detailed information about some of these cases and these things that are going on, so that everybody can understand in a colloquial way. That's not like reading a law book. So I hope I did a good service today. And
You absolutely did and always do.
Always do. My
and rest in peace, Dexter King. That was one of
yeah,
I felt close
Absolutely.
to him, that hurt me very deeply to know that he
wow.
succumbed to prostate cancer today. What were
Yeah.
you about to say,
Abs-
Soul Sister?
I was gonna say, I don't know if you were in Carla's space last week. I caught the tail end of it, and I forget who it was that brought the information to the space, but it was about this group that is very loud and growing. Votify Now. It's an app that you download. It sounds completely illegal. Where they're asking people to track where they think um, basically voter fraud is happening, and you do it like right then and there. I don't know. You take pictures. They have a Twitter account. I don't know all of the details of it, but it is a tool that is being used and pushed and promoted. I'm actually following it. I'm seeing people like Laura Loomer, Marsha Blackburn. I just want you to take a look at it and
Sure.
give us some feedback on. Um,
Yeah, I
Well,
forgot to send that to
I,
you, but she
yeah,
asked me about it and we were both like very, very alarmed because
very.
this sounds like targeting, and this is a technique that they have used. They have done it with the college professors as well. Like they have their list. That was something that what's his name? Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk spearheaded his professors list, and this looks like a list of people that, or areas, or leaders, election workers, can also be targeted. So I really, really want you to take a look at that and talk to us about that because it's very alarming.
well, there's something similar to that and happening in New Hampshire. I guess there was a robocall, an AI generated robocall that's
Oh yeah, I
was
posted a story
circulated,
there.
and
Yeah,
that's very illegal. In 2022, two guys that did a robocall, a fake robocall, I think
Yeah,
in Michigan and Ohio,
Project
they went,
Veritas.
yeah,
Hmm.
they went to jail for that. It's a very illegal, and states are not, and that's where you get 100% agreement between liberals and conservatives, and lawmakers. They are absolutely gung ho about prosecuting those kind of cases. So whomever did that, whoever paid for it, and if there's any connection to whomever it benefited, meaning if Dean had anything to do with it or Bill Ackman had anything to do with it, they're going to get charged. That's a it's an attack on democracy, and it should never be done. And I don't care if it's AI generated or not, but you can't not make robocalls telling people not to vote. That's just per se illegal, no
Right.
matter
And
who's doing it.
yes, it's really the antithesis of what our democracy is all about. It's kind of promoting, the destruction of our democracy. Again, I'm looking forward to you digging into this because So Sister and I are following it, but we would also like to have, the legal,
yeah,
take
better
on.
understanding on how to help people.
Mm-hmm. So we'll send you the link on that. And then Soul Sister also put something up in the Jumbotron, which in the Nest, which I think is very, very exciting news. Do you want to break it to him?
Oh, you can go right ahead, my dear.
Well, the Supreme Court allows the Biden administration to remove razor wire on the U.S. Mexico border in a 5-4 vote. So, yay! Another win for, democracy, decency, and, humanity. So, and
And that's really good news because, I know I can't remember the speaker who said it earlier, but it is true. These governors, oh, I think it was Danny who said these governors are running their states as if they're presidents, and if this at least takes some of that power away from them. And this is what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. This is what we need them to do. And it's not often that I have faith that they're always going to be on the side of right, because of how conservative they are, and because I just don't know that I trust
Right. But
the
you know
best
what?
judgment is being given here. But on this one, they did they did us a service instead of a disservice, and I'm happy to see this news.
Absolutely. And when you talk about not being able to trust them to like do the right thing, I think that it is important that we continue to shine a light and talk about their behavior, because it seems that they can be shamed. Clarence Thomas, due to some, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of media attention pointed at them, and people like us being aware of it and talking about it in order for them to recognize that we see them, and we are calling them to have some accountability. Now, whether they ever have as much as they should, or we think they need to, is another thing. But I think that some just evidence of a spotlight being shown on them having an effect is, things like this. So I think we should continue, and certainly, who is it? Senator Whitehouse is doing a very good job of holding them to account, and also in terms of the environment, because I wanted to just throw in a local situation, like, and you talk about the fossil fuel industry. Here, our state legislature, like maybe two legislative sessions ago, put into law a bill that actually funded and promoted more fossil fuel projects, and actually forbid any further solar development. And in addition to that, they also put in laws that took away the rights of municipalities, like local leaders and just community members literally have no say. And that's very, very dangerous, just on its face. But there is a small community here where they are putting in another gas line. And this is a community who has a gas line nearby, and this is farmland. And that gas line that is already there had an explosion that led to loss of life and property. And now they have another one coming in, and they have no say. I talk all the time about how in Memphis, there is um, just a full on press to take away the rights of communities there to just have access to clean drinking water. Like, we had a weather, some extreme weather incidents here, as did most of the country. But Memphis was under a boil water advisory. They also have a coal ash pile that is starting to leak. And when they discovered it, they moved it across town, kind of in the dark of night, like nobody knew about it. And of course, it was in a largely, predominantly African American community. And they moved it across town to another largely predominant African American community that no one was told about or knew about until the dump trucks started moving in. And this again goes back to regulation, their desire not to have any regulations around what they do. It's all about profit, and it is to our detriment, literally our lives in some respects, because, Memphis, like many areas where this goes on, they have a high cancer rate and death rate in some of those areas where this environmental injustice has been taking place. And it is also one of the driving factors to one of the Justins that we have in office now, and that would be Justin Pearson, who represents Memphis. He is an environmental activist. He's gotten a few awards, but this is what got him into politics. And it makes me think about something else. that people say, and I hear, and I know many of you probably do as well. A lot of people don't enjoy talking about politics because, sometimes it's hard to keep up with the horse race of it all. I don't really particularly enjoy that part, but we need to get people to start to understand, which is what I hope we do here in this space, how politics affects every aspect of our lives, like whether you care about it or not, it's affecting you, like your ability to have access to clean drinking water, your ability, of course, now to have autonomy over your own body. Everything ties back to politics, and you don't have to be, involved in it 24/7 or whatever, but you just need to be aware of it. So I'm going to get off my little soapbox on that. And we have Kim who is up, and also give you guys a heads up that we will be ending the space here within the next 30-45 minutes. So if there's anyone else who wanted to join in the conversation and add anything, this is the time for you to come up and do so. Otherwise, we'll be, ending in about a half hour, and I'll give the folks who are up that I've invited to be presenters an opportunity for some last words. So, Kim, thank you for coming up and joining us, and you have the floor.
So wanted to ask Mark a question before he left, or to ask him about the scenario. So currently, Biden is being able to pursue certain, student debt cancellation using the agencies and the Department of Education. Would this Chevron, the shutdown of the Chevron doctrine affect his ability to do that? I mean, even his use of the HEROES Act, which he initially tried to use as the $20,000 use, but by then using the forgiveness, but also using the agencies to do that, would that make it difficult for those sorts of policies to continue to go through if we knocked it down?
Just to answer, not specifically, because he's using the powers that were delegated to him both like 40 years ago and through the HEROES Act, and staying within the statute. So this is not the Department of Education interpreting and applying their interpretation. This is actually statutory powers that were given to the president through Congress. But it's also the same reason why he can't just do it for everybody, because Congress has not allotted that power to the president through those same acts.
So some of the ways he's doing it now, I know he's not. What it would affect basically executive actions, period. As far as, and he's not using specifically executive action all the time, but some of the executive actions that are liberal, that kind of go past, do a reinterpretation, or they're a unique interpretation. Would that harm a lot of the executive action abilities to have them implemented?
No, because the Chevron decision is based upon federal agencies' power that are given congressional authority to regulate whatever they regulate. This has not, it actually really has nothing to do with the president. So executive orders are not within the scope of what this decision means from the Chevron case from 1984. This is in regards to how Congress has basically, like if I gave you the power to hire people, and I want you to, I want you to uh, I want you to emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what the Supreme Court is reviewing right now. What the power that I gave you and your ability to do so, and how you interpret that on a case by case basis. I think that the Supreme Court does not want to have the federal court making laws as they go. So I think, like I said, it's going to be a 5-4 court. And I think Justice Roberts sees this, even though conservatives love this. But I don't think that the Supreme Court wants to bog the federal court down in endless litigation for the rest of our lives.
And and I also always want to point out that the two oldest members of that court are conservative. So if we can keep Democratic control in both the Senate and the presidency for as long as it takes to get those two people out, we can reverse some of the trends, because we'll have a 5-4 liberal leaning court. One of the other issues I wanted to talk about, because I'm glad you brought it up, because I've been running a couple spaces about populism, both on the left and the right, and the kind of arguments that we have about economics that aren't about the economy of not just the United States, but all developed nations. I've always argued that the Republicans want you to have a socialism versus capitalism argument because they don't want to have the debate about supply side economics versus demand side economics. And we need to have that argument so that people understand what's really at stake. I've always said 2/3 of all economic activities based on consumer spending. That means if you take a tax policy, say the child tax credit, and it's a way to help the working class and to put money to take taxes, and you decide, okay, we got the tax revenue, how do we spend it? Do we give it to a corporation just because they're rich, or do we give it to a rich guy just because he has a certain amount of wealth, or do we take that money and give it to child tax cuts, student loan debt cancellation, those kinds of things, and ways in which we can help put money in the pocket of the demand side, the Keynesian side, as opposed to the supply side. That when we do that, when we have historically done that, and countries around the world have historically done that, their economies improve and they sustain that growth. It's not. Sometimes there is a growth that happens with demand, supply side economics, but it's manufactured and artificial, and it usually ends up in a bust. And so we need to. I think we need to have. I've been looking to have more people have that discussion because it really is at the heart of why
Well, you
Republicans do
and
what they do.
right, and I appreciate your understanding of it, and your having spaces to have conversations around it, and I think it is needed. So I wish you success, and maybe Mark can come in there and join up and espouse some of his. Economic insights into that
we
conversation. Like I
we we,
said,
we just need more Keynesian champions. you
yes,
know,
exactly. Again, the fire hose of truth, and that in all of its, many elements, and just giving people a basic understanding of how these things operate, and the essentially, the you know the Republicans' way of reframing things is what they're genius at. So I do think it's important when you're able to suss that out. So thank you again, Kim. I do have 2K up. I'm going to allow her to share with us. I'm so glad that she's brought her wit and wisdom to the conversation today, and a few more folks that I invited up earlier. So glad you guys joined us. 2K, how are you?
Well, since you ask, I'm glad to be here with all of my tweeple because I'm heartbroken, just devastated that my man Tim Scott is off the market. I need your support. I appreciate any.
I'm so sorry that Chance has left the building for you. I know that it's going to be hard for you to get over it, but
Just give
It's
we're
yourself about
we're here to help.
5 years. Five
I'm
years, I give it. Maybe 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. He'll be back on the market. You can get him then, honey.
oh okay. Thank
He'll
you.
be all trained up by then. He'll be all
That
trained
gives
up.
me a tiny bit of hope. But I wanted uh, to be serious to build on what Mark was saying. The Chevron decision actually is something that has me really afraid. And another thing too, talk about the failure of civics. What people don't really understand when they talk about, oh, the deep state and the government's going to do this and that, the expertise that is embodied in federal workers and the continuity that that gives us is just, I mean, things would fall apart. And if that breaks down to, as Mark was saying, I mean, if you're going to have to adjudicate everything, I mean, policy making is an art. It is. When you have legislation and you just simply have somebody says, okay, do this or don't do this, what the administrative process gives us is the how and the nitty gritty and the stuff that some people find boring that they don't want to think about. But in that, you get continuity. And you have people who have been working on jobs for years and take their work seriously, and big ups to them too, because that is and then also with the criteria, the whole bureaucratic system was allegedly put in place and I know it doesn't always work. I know that, but put in place in a way that is supposed to reduce favoritism and enhance use of expertise. And then, of course, if we do it right, we're going to build in DEI and even, dare I say, if we can keep Biden and Harris around long enough, some social justice concerns. So I am very, very, and Mark, what Mark said encouraged me because I do believe if you're going to go to a system where people are going to be picking and fighting about everything in court, good luck with that. And talk about things grinding to a halt. Not to mention the thing that thing Lump has in mind in terms of like sweeping out, getting rid of federal employees and hiring people who take a loyalty oath. We know those people are not up to the job. I started to say something unkind. But a
And they
lot.
don't have to be up to the job per se. What they're calling for more is for loyalty. Like they want people who are willing to bend the rules, or totally break them or ignore them, rules that they have been trained and taken an oath to do, in honor to the president's agenda. That's what they're being trained for.
Precisely.
Or
And
the
when you
Betsy
have
DeVos, the
people
Betsy
who
DeVosses who wanted to destroy the very agencies that they oversee.
precisely, and now what? So anyway, so with the Chevron decision, I am concerned. That's my late. And when I heard that, I was like, oh dear Lord, no. And just I'll leave it at this. I'm just so flippin' tired of worrying about every single thing. But you know what though? Let me speak some positivity into it because what I am claiming is victory for all of us. And I'll just leave it at that. And thank you again for all of your sympathy. It's been a rough day for me.
We're here for you all the time. So
By the way,
I
I actually give him about 4 months if he doesn't get the VP spot.
so up next we've got Malarkey, and then Black Stem, who I invited up. I'm so glad that you're here, and then we'll start to wrap up, and I'll give Davina, Danny, and Mark an opportunity to give us some closing thoughts.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dee. Thanks for having me. Hi, Soul Sister. I just want to also just send my most sincere condolences to, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, TK, 2K. I'm sorry, can you say that?
2K is right,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. So I'm so sorry. And I think that there are, ones of ones to tens of single women across the country who are feeling the same way that you are today, and I hope that you find those maybe five other women and you can maybe get together and have a support group, maybe over Zoom or something. But I think you're going to get through it. I really do. But I mean, frankly, I'm a therapist, and that's one that I can't even really help you with or even begin to understand. So, all my best to you. But beyond that, oh, what a mess. But anyway, just like politically speaking, why wouldn't he propose to her? Like, I mean, first of all, like, I'm shocked that she's a real person. And it was not lost on me that the day that he revealed her was the same day that the actors' strike ended. Not sure if anybody else picked up on that. That is a real thing that happened. Not even kidding. Look at the dates. But anyway, whatever. So I came up for a couple reasons. Number one is I'm sure you talked about this earlier today, but and I apologize for being late to the party, but I've been trolling Dean Phillips, as has become my part-time job, and I love it so much. And so I'm sure that you guys know that there's a write-in campaign for Joe Biden for tomorrow in New Hampshire. So I put up a tweet that I made about that. A video from New Hampshire voters that are talking about, why they're supporting Joe Biden. And I have plenty of tweets. Just search my page. Honestly, you're probably going to be concerned about me, like more concerned than I am for the 5 women across the country that are sad about Tim Scott. You'll be concerned about me at how many threads I have on Dean Phillips. So, that one is about, the how to write in Joe Biden tomorrow. There's a website and some other stuff. And then, I have other threads about just Dean Phillips being a giant loser, which I don't think I need to tell anybody in here. So there's that. Not sure if you saw that there is this very, again, speaking of coincidental timing, that right after Dean Phillips, got this donation from Sam Altman, who we know, got made his money off of AI. And Dean Phillips was, something happened where he was told that he couldn't use AI in his campaign with his own voice. Then all of a sudden it comes out today that there are robocalls going out using AI impersonating President Biden, saying that people should not go out and vote for Joe Biden tomorrow. So, I'm not out here to say that that's a weird coincidence, but I'm going to say that that's a weird coincidence. I just don't, like, even if he was acting in good faith, Dean Phillips, he's not even remotely qualified. Again, I don't have to convince anybody here, but he's not acting in good faith. This is some really shady stuff. And I think that and somebody asked me a couple days ago, like, if I thought that I was like, if it was like a waste of my time to put together all this stuff about Dean Phillips. And I said, first of all, no, because I believe in self-care and it makes me happy. Number two, I really do believe, and I have believed from square one, that he's really not in this to become the Democratic nominee, because he knows that he won't be, and that his plan all along has been to get just enough exposure and then drop out and run with no labels. So, and I've been saying this for months. And then I'm not sure if you saw the other day that, he has, said that he's open to it. And just so for anybody that doesn't know, Dean is a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress, and they were actually formed by No Labels. And so I would not be surprised at all if he ends up dropping out, maybe not after New Hampshire, maybe he will stick it out until after South Carolina. I don't know, but I think that if No Labels does put forth a candidate, it's probably going to be Dean Phillips. So
I would say your crystal ball is reading pretty
my
clear.
crystal ball has been kind of eerily correct for a long time now, and I hate that so much, because it's like, hasn't, like, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of really good stuff. I was within like one seat of predicting like the House and everything, and so, I feel really good. To be clear, I feel really good going into 2024, but that is if things continue the way that they are with everything that we're doing and us keeping our foot on the gas, and especially educating people about the dangers of the third parties. That's the only thing that I'm worried about, is with No Labels. And, RFK Jr., backfired on them, because that's definitely going to take more away from Trump. And it's going to take, now that DeSantis is out, I'm hearing from a lot of DeSantis voters that they plan on voting for RFK Jr., which is fine. Who cares? The only concern that is, that we don't lose any voters. As long as we gain voters and Trump doesn't gain any voters, like, we're fine. But the problem is that with No Labels in particular, is that they're trying to get ballot access in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, the states that we really need that, because of our system, it could come down to 10,000 votes, here and there. And that's really problematic. So I think that, it's no question that Joe Biden is going to be our nominee, and we have an incredibly strong record to run on, that we have to continue to, educate ourselves on that, and particularly about the economy, and But beyond that, we really, really, really need to focus on helping people understand how their vote for a third party is a vote for Trump. But even if they don't believe us on that, explaining to them how their vote for a third party is really a wasted vote, because whoever it is, is never going to ever win, ever. It's just not the way that it happens. And, you can have your beliefs about the two-party system and how you want, ranked choice voting and what have you. And, we can certainly have a debate about that. But the fact of the matter is that we don't have that for November of 2024. And I think that we also have to really educate people on what No Labels, again, explicitly, and RFK Jr. explicitly hopes will happen. They've said it out loud. We don't have to speculate that they hope that it goes to a contingent election. And I know that we've talked about this before, so I won't belabor the point, but look into it and what a contingent election is. And essentially, it's just that Congress would decide who the president and vice president is. And if you think that it was a, SHIT show with them choosing who the Speaker of the House is, just imagine those clowns choosing the president. And we know who they choose, right? So it's a mess, and this is what they want. They're nefarious actors. And so we really have to educate people on the dangers of the third party situation and what they want to do. And so, so if you could just spread around that information about writing in Joe Biden tomorrow, because I'm totally confident that he's going to win. I just want Dean Phillips to be as embarrassed as possible. And if you do it for no other reason, but to, I think I have like a little bit of, I don't know if I have the flu, I'm not really sure, but like, if you just want to like help me feel better, because watching Dean Phillips get absolutely torched on the daily is honestly just, it's just like life fuel for me every day. But especially,
Well, I appreciate you, and it's nice to know somebody that is committed to Dean dropping
oh my
out,
God.
as Condi is. So we don't think you're weird. I just
Oh, I
love it
am,
that
to be clear, I
and
am weird and I own that's fine.
Hey,
Yeah.
and that's okay. That's okay. I'm here with you. I'm the nerd, the widow, or whatever. But it's fine. But I just want you to know that you are not alone. And I love to see the clips. I saw one of him, of course, alone in the at his tailgate, event, and then the one where he actually had people was where he was confronted with the write-in Biden
Did you
members,
see?
and that was hilarious.
Yeah, like he's just like not well. Like he's like just such a nasty
It's like he
little.
likes this, and this is where what you're saying there. I mean, we're joking, but it's very, very serious, and it's very dangerous, because
Yeah.
I think that everything that you said is absolutely correct. Like, this was a way for them to squeeze in someone that they wanted, and not establish that they were doing that from the beginning, because they tried to be coy about, well, we're not trying to be spoilers, but yeah, you are,
Hmm.
and it's very, very dangerous. And I'm just really, I don't know why, but some of the people who have signed on to this has really, like, surprised me, because, like, it's not like they don't understand how politics work. Because, like Andrew Yang and some of these guys, I can understand them. They're young, and their brains have been warped by some of the, populist, propaganda from, Bernie and others. But some of these guys, like David Jolly, he knows exactly how politics works.
David
And
Jolly out in support of the third party.
he has been pushing this forward party thing.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
And yes, and that was designed, like they
Good.
and no labels. I think there's some crossover
Oh
there.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I think you're right about that, Miss
Well,
D.
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that like Dean Phillips, Andrew Yang, these people, it's like, may we all one day live to experience the joy of waking up with the unearned confidence of a rich white man, or a rich man, whoever, wherever, because obviously Andrew Yang is not white, but like, it's just unbelievable. Like, it's just the entitlement. If you guys didn't see, I'll put the story up in the nest about Dean's little fanboy Joe Biden moment, where he forced himself onto Air Force One, and Joe Biden had to be moved to a different part of the plane because Dean was practically sitting on his lap. It just unbelievably embarrassed and embarrassing. And that's all. It's like just this weirdo, creepy, like daddy love me thing. It's really weird. But anyway, all right, I'll let you guys go and leave you with that image in your mind. But thank you for
Well,
talk.
thank you and 2K so much for bringing a little lightheartedness to some very, very serious and dangerous, things that are going on. And,
Yeah.
sometimes we need that levity. So you guys were, that perfect moment in the conversation today. So with that, I'm going to go
And
back to,
TK, please,
to
yeah, TK, again, all my best to you and your one friend who really are going to be sad about Tim Scott. So, all right, feel better, guys. Bye.
Bye, Malarkey. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go back to 2K and then Black Stem, and then we'll do our wrap up. And again, thank you guys so very much for another wonderful, afternoon of good trouble and noise making. So
Hello. I know sometimes I see things just a little bit differently, and I want to say first of all, Malarkey, thanks. I have a new friend to enroll in my support system. But on a serious note, the thing about Dean Phillips is, I I know we don't like it when people say it about women, but the guy is fundamentally just unlikable. He's got and he's a weirdo. So with him being with no labels, if they had someone else, and not Robert, whatever I can't even use the word. He's not a Kennedy. Um, Not him. If they had someone else, I might be a little worried. I don't think Dean. I agree. I understand why people are afraid, but I don't think Dean is serviceable enough for them because as time he just grates on you, and I don't think they'll be able to blow him up enough. And I agree with all the this is a vanity project for him. Something's wrong with him. The screws are loose or whatever. There's that. The other thing that I wanted to throw out for your consideration. I know we're wrapping up, but I'd love to hear from people about this, maybe in other spaces or subsequent spaces. I mean, Trump is so unhinged. You remember, when they say everything Trump touches dies. Well, he's touched himself, and stop that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, you just see him growing more and more unhinged. And I'm thinking, let him talk. Let him talk. Because I think the people, the powers that be, maybe not the no labels people, I don't know about them, because fundamentally bigotry, and I use that as the broadest term of all, that includes all of your isms, your racism, and your phobia, and your phobias, what have you. It's a hell of a drug, and they don't want to give up. But on some level, I think when these people realize that, because he's out of control, um, we know he's given away secrets, etc. And I think deep down, some of the powers that be, when they realize that he's really going to mess up the bag, some stuff might get pulled. It won't be obvious necessarily, but I think some things will be pulled off the table. And that's just one thing. But with Dean, he has what was the word of the year, according to Merriam-Webster for last year, was Riz, as in short for charisma. Dean is Rizless. He's not. He is not the. He's not the answer. So that gives me some hope. Unless they find somebody, and then I'm sorry, I can't help but laugh. It's like Dean and Andrew. Come on, y'all. Really, come on. That gives me hope. So I will pass with that. I just wanted to throw that out there and see what people think at some point. Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I tend to agree with most of what you said. And it's not so much the person, but it's the overall project itself where the danger lies. So, it doesn't,
Precisely. But
yeah.
to the extent that they waste time shuffling through all these potential candidates, good. Let them, because time's growing short, and Joe and Kamala will just show off more and more. And the other thing that, I do want to, trust me, no cookies for David Jolly, but I think I haven't heard anything more about the Party. I think he's backed off of that. I think that at least the few times that I've seen him around, he's really going hard at the, Joe or nothing. So, the more people we get doing that, the better all, and I don't care who it is. I really don't care who says it, as
Now is
long as
the
it gets
time
said.
for uncomfortable coalitions. It's going to take all of us. And like I said, I just was very shocked at him endorsing this party in the beginning because, like I said, some of these guys, yeah, I get it. They don't understand. They don't want to understand. But David Jolly knows.
He does know. And I
Hmm.
think I haven't heard anything more about no label or what do you call it?
The forward part.
Forward coming from
Hmm.
him. And he does seem to be riding hard for Joe and Kamala. Well, maybe not hard, but I mean, I think he's
He's
tuning
talking
out
about what's,
the
yeah,
nonsense.
right. He's talking about what's at stake. And that's what we all need to be focused on because all
Thank
of
you.
these sideshows, like they're good for laughs or whatever. But I know that most of us here, I'm preaching to the choir, understand what's at stake. And when we have conversations with people and we talk about politics, we always need to include that aspect. Like they're actually, how they kind of take the messaging that we have and kind of flip it on its head. And still words and make them mean other things like patriotism, how they use that, and Christianity has totally lost its meaning. We need to take those words back and make sure that people truly do understand, what they mean. And so now what's happening is that President Biden has been talking about, I mean, he actually launched his campaign on democracy, because it was launched after the Charlottesville incident, and he launched this second bid about the danger to our democracy. So they are taking that messaging and trying to dissipate the fear and concern that people should have for it. In some ways, I think the former guy has actually um, did a total projection, and was talking about President Biden being a danger to our democracy. So I want us to kind of be aware of that, and also like sometimes perhaps a little recalibrating on our part, and adjusting our language, because remember I talked about last week how Heather Cox Richardson, the historian at Boston College, talks about basically in her opinion, the way that the Republicans have been able to advance their authoritarian agenda is through the weaponizing of language. So that's why I think that we need to, take it back, and when we can talk about democracy, because it is at stake, but we can break it down to a single word: freedom. People understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like all of our freedoms are at stake. So, Malarkey, one quick thing, and then we're going to go to Black STEM and we're going to wrap up. Go ahead.
We'll be super quick. Thank you. So, Dean's middle initial is B, and I put up in the nest what that stands for if you want to check it out. It's the opposite of Riz. So, that's up there. And then just totally 100% agree with you, D, about now's the time for uncomfortable, allyships. And, that they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And actually, I forgot to mention that before. And I know that you know this, D, but I've been going into spaces with DeSantis supporters for months now, and just building relationships with them. And certainly, there are a lot of things that I do not agree with, and some things that are really, frankly, really offensive, as we know. But there's a lot more that we do agree on, and the one thing that we agree on most strongly is that we do not want Donald Trump to be back in office ever again. And, the thing that we've been working on with them, me and a few other people that some of you may be familiar with, is that, they want to get rid of MAGA entirely. And that means voting against these people. And so we've actually gotten to the point where we have people that plan to vote for Joe Biden. They plan to vote for Democrats down the ballot because they're tying MAGA together with Donald Trump, and they want to build their party again. And we've been emphasizing with them that, hey, look, Democrats want a healthier Republican Party too. We're not enemies. We're all together. We're all Americans. We don't agree on everything, but let's get back to the point that we can disagree on policy, and we don't have this domestic terrorism,
party that have hijacked your party and embarrass you guys and really like lean into all of that. And MAGA has been turning on them and threatening them. And, so we're just there kind of like, being empathic towards them. And again, not agreeing on everything at all, but like, recognizing that we're playing chess here. And, we're utilizing the allies that we can find wherever it is to meet the goal that we need to meet right now, which is defeating Donald Trump. So I would encourage everyone to pop into those spaces, even if you just listen for a little while. And especially now that DeSantis is out of the race, this is a really ripe opportunity for us to, help them to understand that, they can actually defeat Donald Trump anyway, even though DeSantis is out of the race now. So thanks again. Oh, and just one last thing. I want to have some spaces soon on no labels and third parties. So I'll send that your way, Dee, and hopefully we can all get together and talk again. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd love to talk about them. So just let me know, and I will definitely make my way there because I think it's, people need to understand these dangers. And I'm so happy to see all of you guys, going into spaces. Like, I love what you do there because we can have conversations with people when we meet them at their human level to find those, areas where we connect, and as Ruth Ben Gott says, kind of come in sideways with them to help them, see the light, so to speak. And it is important. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but we should all agree that in order for us to continue to have our disagreements without fear of harm or survival coming to us, it requires us to be in a democracy. Like, I am all for a normal Republican Party who I can disagree with in, policy, but who absolutely loves this country and agree with on us remaining a democracy. So we can get together on that. And thank you. And I'm so happy to hear that you are making inroads. Keep up the great work. So up next, we've got Black STEM, and then I'm going to give us a wrap up from our presenters today, which we'll start with Davina, then Danny, and Mark.
Hi Dee, hi Soul Sister, Davina, Mark, everybody. Happy Monday. I about three things that I just want to quickly mention. By the way, Dr. Benjamin Chavis, who is the No Labels lead, he is actually working down here in my hometown, and he's been offering or has been posting that he's going to be doing some local speeches about a variety of topics. So I'm going to see if I can sneak into one of his sessions and see if I can ask some relevant questions given what we've talked about here today. I already know him through Twitter, but or I guess X, but I'm going to see if I can sneak into one of his talks and actually, not try to embarrass him, but just ask questions, ask probing questions, because I think sometimes if we understand what's happening on the other end, how people arrived at the decisions they made to get involved with certain things, we have a better understanding then of how to counter that. And right now, I don't understand how he got involved. So I think I'll try to maybe make one of his speeches and report back to you guys.
I would love that.
I don't know. He might brainwash me. I don't know. I might switch over. I don't know. The second thing that I wanted to mention is with regards to an earlier discussion that we had, which is around the issue of journalism. I know that we talked about TV, radio, and local. I would like to encourage those of you that are near college campuses to also pay attention to your college campus journalists and college reporters.
And many of them have substantial radio stations as well.
Correct. And oftentimes these young people are they're very swift. They're very smart in understanding politics. Sometimes I think we underestimate our younger folks, even, that are still in the middle of their college years. But in my area, there's been a lot of efforts to try to take over the journalism colleges and to make them more conservative. And the youth are fighting back. They're actually publishing op-eds in local newspapers. They're actually inviting people to come on their campus so that they can sit down and talk with them about the issues related to local politics. They're sitting in on a lot of these secret board discussions where conservatives make all the policies and they're reporting out what's happening. So please don't forget to support our college students that they're still learning how to become journalists, but some of them are pretty darn good at investigating and reporting the truth. And if we can do everything we can to support them, let's do so. And then my final comment is my local main library had a poster up here about 2 weeks ago, right after New Year's, looking for volunteers to come in and speak to people about how to use tablets, their smartphones, and notebooks. And I was wondering what the heck, why, why would you want to have people come in and volunteer to do that? And so I asked the question, they said, well, a lot of people now, because technologies, we've got smart TVs, we've got, Paramount Plus, we've got Disney Plus, everybody's switching over to streaming, and some people are just not understanding how to get to their local news. The technology is not being explained to them. They're being encouraged to buy these gadgets and they're playing games with them, but they're missing out on the utility and the information that is locked inside. So if you have an opportunity to visit your local library and you understand how to get to Washington Post, how to get to your local news via streaming, how to get to behind the paywall, like we talked about earlier, so that people can actually read. And this goes for all age groups, not just, young people. It's also for seniors as well. Please volunteer to do a session. I walked into my library last year and volunteered to do a session on affordable housing, and I was shocked. They were like, "Sure, we would love to help you," and they did. And it cost me $0 to do it. And but the benefits to the community, I'm still hearing about it even several months, later. So please, if you have a chance, because I know that Dee always emphasizes that we need to find ways that we can be, rather than reactive and woe is me, that we find proactive ways, positive ways to impact people. Please volunteer to do something like this, an electronics class or something like this, where you teach people how to get to the news, how to get past all of the streaming that's happening, and empowering people so that they know exactly how to get to the truth. Thanks a lot, Dee.
Oh, thank you, as always, bringing up, some great points, encouraging people and leading the way by example. I'm blown away every time, you come in and speak to us and you talk about some of the things that you have done. Like you said, it didn't cost you anything, but you know that the impact was priceless, and this is how we make change and affect change at the local level that has that ripple effect that I like to talk about, because I believe that, our conversations, the information that's shared here, the inspiration that's gained goes out into other circles. You all have your circles of influence in real life. You have your circle of influences here, on X and in other social media arenas. And so you spread that information, and then, someone you encounter in there, takes it, and it keeps growing and growing. And that's how we build our fire hose of truth. So I thank you all for coming here and helping to, um, support and to fuel that fire hose of truth. I'm always blown away by the information that is shared and the inspiration that I gain from you guys. So I just want to thank all of you who have come and shared with us today. And I especially want to thank my presenters that I asked to come and speak to us today, and give them an opportunity for some closing thoughts and insights. And that I'm going to start with Davina, then Danny, and then Mark.
Hello, Dee. Hello, Soul Sister. Thank you so much for letting me back on for some closing thoughts. I wanted to take away that I'm inspired by two different suggestions today and three different people, I guess. Most inspired me because I want to write on a piece of paper what Dee said, fire hose of truth, and use that to try and prompt me to get some writing done. And secondly, I'm going to try and take notes as well for points that maybe I could say in a non adversarial way if I go into a DeSantis supporter Twitter space, as Ms. Malaki suggested, because I do believe that it is those uncomfortable coalitions which are part of the effort to defeat fascism, shore up democracy through coalitions, through finding things in common that, we don't have to have entire unity of opinions and approaches, even. We want the Democrats to succeed more than not, often because we support their policies, but we still want to make alliances with people who support American democracy and who support that idea of compromise and valuing um, all demographic groups and seeking to support the common good in the most maximal way, the most utilitarian, most helpful, as well as um, aspirationally equitable way. And now that I've said that, that reminds me of something Mark said, which is he dropped the word Keynesian. And I'm thinking, oh man, I did one semester of economics, and I have been wanting to say the word Keynesian to people for ages because, as I understand it, it's just supporting that idea from John Maynard Keynes or whatever, that government investment in an economy is what enables an economy to grow even during difficult moments. Whereas the opposite, the tighten your belt, contraction idea of austerity economics, where you try and reduce spending, actually leads to much more harmful outcomes for a majority of people, even as it enables rich people to start buying up homes that have been banks have reclaimed, have repossessed homes and things like that. So I'm a big believer, and I'm thinking I should try and talk to Mark sometime if we can collaborate on writing little passages of economic explainers for people if we ever get together some kind of a pro democracy publication. And lastly, um, what is your name? Black Stem. Thank you so much for being so inspirational with your actions in the world. That's a final thing that I want to say is an antidote to the impulses that combine to make fascism, which is that action is often the antidote to feeling powerless. And fascism can be like a puffer fish swelling itself up to look more potent and strong and be noisier than it actually is, to act as if they are a righteous moral majority when in fact they are often very immoral and promote the corrupt activities of an elite few, even with the backing of a lot of lower tier people who just are hoodwinked to hop on board with um, because they're sucked into it via ego manipulation that tells them they're special, that they can break rules like Trump and violate norms and that type of thing. And even break laws as well. I mean, Trump inspired a lot of people to go break laws at the Capitol, and you see them complaining about it and bitching about it and saying, "Oh, they can't catch a plane now without being treated like a terrorist." Yeah, because it's a delusion. It's a Trump pipe dream to promise you that you can break laws as easily as him. He's just got a lot of history with breaking laws and trying to manipulate the legal system, and hopefully his run of impunity is coming to an end. And certainly he's had to pay $19 million over the last few years to lawyers. So, yes, good luck to all of us. And we'll keep up the good work with informing and inspiring each other in spaces like this, and then take that off screen as well, and do more. Thank you all so much for being part of a movement for the common good. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Well, thank you, Davina. I always appreciate your musings and your thoughts, and I think that that would be a lovely idea for a collaboration of explainers on, the economics aspects that they twist into their narrative to convince people to vote against things that are harmful to them and their community. And so thank you again for all your efforts in, bringing, just a loftier way of thinking
Oh,
about
could
things.
I? So I actually got to say one tiny thing with
Mhm.
regards to economics, just because it's such a big talking point that we could have, which is that Trump was much worse for the economy than that fabricated Republican reputation would suggest. He started a trade wars that harmed farmers and had to pay $28 billion of taxpayer money to try and make it up to farmers whose contracts he had eroded because of picking fights with American trading partners for all for his strongman posturing fascist strategies of saying, look at me, I'm so great, I'm so tough. And really, there were such negative outcomes for people in 2019. So pre COVID, the economy was contracting, the manufacturing sector went through a recession, experienced a relatively mild recession, but it was still a recession that was spreading and put Trump in a position of having to kiss up to China in order to get the President Xi's signature on a trade deal so that he could keep the media running with his fake narrative of economic good stewardship, whereas he's not. Anyway, I just would love to tell that story more. And if anybody who's good at economics and the terminology wants to jump on board with that endeavor, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Davina, again. And I am glad that you mentioned that because there are people, I think that a town in Ohio that lost a lot of jobs, where he specifically campaigned and promised them, you're not going anywhere. You don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. But this is, what he does. And so we have to break through to people and ways that affect them personally, because many of them have bought into the propaganda because it's been spewing for so long on all of their platforms. So it's time for us to take this information back, to take the narrative back, and help people to understand what really does affect them and how it affects them. So again, appreciate you coming and sharing with us today. And up next, we have Danny, who did an excellent job of, an overview of a wonderful interview with Jeff Bennett. I loved it. And I'm so glad that you were able to take time out today to come in to give us your insights on it. He's an awesome reporter. And, I'm just going to let you have the mic.
Yes, thank you, Miss D and Soul Sister. Um, I agree with your sentiment about Jeff Bennett. He's one that kind of goes under the radar. You don't really hear about him too much, but he's often put out great reporting. Something that I did forget to mention, actually, two things. Um, One was I forgot to mention Sports Illustrated. They had the news this past week, I believe this weekend, they are doing a major layoff on the majority of their writers. And you think about sports journalism, um, that's a whole genre, that's a whole beast. It's just as important as other forms of journalism. And now that again, like where are those writers going to go? I am hoping, maybe HBO Sports pick up a few of them, CBS, Fox Sports. There are so many ways in which journalism is taking a lot of talent out of circulation, and I would hope that that those writers, those staff, are able to um, continue with their journey. But sports journalism, I think, it's often overlooked. And when you think about, when ESPN does their 30 for 30, uh, I mean, they create a whole series just for watching, and it's based on the reporting of journalists. And so, just wanted to mention that. Also, I don't know if she's still in here. Our good mutual Ingrid. Sometimes she comes up and speaks, and she reminded me two things. What Ron DeSantis did in the state of Florida. because he has a supermajority in the state legislature. One was Donald Trump helped him win back in 2018, right? Even Donald Trump alluded to that. But also, he was able to get them to change state law so that he can be a governor while actively run to be the president of the United States. And when I say that, we need to also watch a lot of what these Republicans, especially in red states, especially to those who have supermajority in those red states, because that can go underneath the radar as well. And if anyone needs any more proof of why elections are important, why we were screaming at the top of our lungs in 2016 why the election was important, because we kept saying that the courts were in play. And thankfully, the courts got it right with shooting down what Greg Abbott is doing at the border. You may have a problem with how immigration is being done in this country. You may try to justify what he's doing, but what he has done for a long time now is inhumane. I do not understand why he isn't being charged, or the terms crimes against humanity isn't applied to him just because he holds office. I mean, there's literally, you can see where there are asylum seekers that come in through the state of Texas and they don't leave, they die. Or he's sending them to Chicago, or he's sending them elsewhere. And the conditions in which they are being sent, there needs to be an investigation of how he's running that state and how he is directly responsible for a lot of the deaths that do happen at that border. And I get it. It's a border, that it goes into which waters they were in. I get all that. But he did not have to do that. The cruelty is the point. He is looking to see just how far he can get away with being unkind and showing that these are brown people that are trying to come in and we won't let them. He's not doing this with any other group of people. Matter of fact, none of the Republican governors are doing it with any other group of people unless they can identify them as being brown or black. At the end of the day, they are all still human. They are all just trying to get to safety for themselves and their children. And the fact that so many have died, so many are lost in the system, they're just being bussed out in the middle of the night. They also have these handlers that will speak their language to try to coax them to get on a plane or on a bus in the middle of the night to be dropped off in freezing Chicago or in front of the VP Harris's residence. These are all people that are just trying to find a way. And again, this is where local journalism comes in. Anybody keeping track of these people? Is anybody asking any questions? The countries that they're coming from, what are they saying? There's a lot that needs to be reported on. And I think it does kind of fly underneath the radar because we can just chalk it up, oh, it's just Greg Abbott being inhumane. But he's just being cruel. He's just being an asshole. There's a reason why he feels like he gets to do that. Because for right now, he's been able to get away with it. And I am happy about the court's decision. And that is why the elections are important. Because then you get results like this that says you overstep your boundary. And I hope there is more to come that will put a check on his reign, his ruling, his power that he really does not have, but he is exploiting. And I think that's the true danger of a lot of these elected Republicans in red states. Because if you can't check them at the local level, you can't check them at the state level, really all we have left is the courts to put a check and balance on them. And many have not gone in our favor, but this is one that we can put in the win column. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Oh, well, thank you for taking me up on the offer, and I'm glad that everything aligned in a way today that you could come in and share with us and just hang out the entire time, because I know, like many of us, you have in real life stuff that you're dealing with, and sometimes it doesn't permit you to come in. But I feel blessed whenever you are, and you always leave us with a lot of good information, facts, and insights and inspiration. So kudos to you. Thank you so very much. And yes, you made some very good points that it matters. And kudos to Ingrid for reminding us of that. And this is what happens. They do so much that we don't have the time to really wrap our brains around one illegal thing or horrible thing that they've done until they're doing something else. And so before long, some of the awful things that they did in June are forgotten by the time September comes around, because they or November comes around, because they've done so many other awful things. And it's important, and that's why I try to go back to historical things, so that we understand that many of the things that they are doing are not new. And when you talked about what he's doing, him and Abbott both sending these migrants north and just leaving them, and what happens to them, again, folks, here's an example of history rhyming, because this isn't the first time. And that's the thing. Some of these guys are not that smart. They're going back and finding things that they have done, and sometimes that we've done in our past, to use it in a modern way. Example of that, Moms for Liberty, just a modern iteration of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, who were very, very successful in their mission of expanding the lost cause ideology, and had a strong hold on for many, many decades. I've lost Mark. Hopefully he can come back up. But the thing that I wanted to remind you guys of, when Danny was talking about the migrants, was that back in the 1960s, after Brown versus Board, and Rachel Maddow, who is so excellent at connecting these historical dots in her podcast Deja Vu, she talks about an instance where in Arkansas they did this reverse busing thing, and they literally conned Black people that they wanted to get out of their state, many of who, didn't have jobs or were, just they wanted them gone. So they convinced them that they had a better opportunity in the North. And in particular, this one story that she talks about is how they got them on a bus to what's the vacation place of the Kennedys? The name escapes me now. So, sister, do you remember um,
The name of what? I'm sorry.
where the Kennedys used to,
Oh, oh gosh, I know what you're talking about. I can Hyannisport. No.
yes, that's what.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, so they conned these people and told them that they gave them a bus ticket, a few dollars, and told them that there were jobs waiting for them there, and some of them that they sent there, they told them that President Kennedy would be there to meet them. They describe in the story how a Black woman with 9 children left everything she had in Arkansas and went there and asked the driver to pull over on the side of the road just before they got there, so she could put on her best. And there are pictures, and I'll put this on my timeline because I don't have it ready right now in the
I
form
remember
of a post.
where you sharing with me, D.
And put them she asked, and she put on her Sunday best and got there, and there was no one there, of course, to greet them. And so this is the same thing that's going on now. So that's why, it is important for us to talk about these things. And, like some of the stuff they're doing is not new. Like the Project 2025 is actually not new. It's just something they took out and dusted off from the 1930s, their conservative manifesto, and they have continued to hone it and make it fit to the time that they're in. You know, they dusted it off and presented it to Reagan as the mandate for leadership, and they've dusted it off again, and now it is. Project 2025 to advance Trumpism. And each iteration, of course, gets worse and worse. So there we are. And with that, I don't know if Mark had lost connection or he had to go. I'm sorry. Yeah, he had to leave. So unfortunately, but we will, wrap up with some closing thoughts from my fabulous co-host, and then I will read our closeout. And just thank you guys again for being here with us once again, starting your Monday off right and helping me start mine's off. So, Slister, what say you? What are your thoughts and insights that you'd like to leave with folks today?
Well, thank you so much, Misty. And today was one of those days where I was taking notes while being in this space, as I often do. And I always count that as a win because the sharing and learning and growing is very important. And that's what Advocacy Arena delivers each and every time. I do want to point out that there was a story that we did not get an opportunity to discuss, but it is posted in the Nest, and it's from the Dallas Morning News. It's about how misinformation is affecting the Latino community, and how it's really being driven by these pink slime medias. And if you're not familiar with pink slime medias, they seem like reputable media sources, but really they're full of fringe conspiracy theories. Two of the bigger ones that are most egregious in the community are Voz, VOZ media, and Americano media. Um, they Some are saying, well, part of it is it's some things are being lost in translation, and that is attributing to the misinformation that is being delivered to the community. But the biggest thing is, once again, we're talking about smaller news networks, whether it's print or a radio, etc., are very low income. They don't have enough workers, they don't have enough resources. So I think they're just trying to put out a product as quickly as possible in order to meet the demand of delivering news and not being as careful. So here, this is what we end up with. So we have to remember that there is a lot of misinformation happening, and Fourth Estate is failing on many different levels and in many different languages. And I really think you guys should check out the article. It just it's worth the read, and I really hope that the Dems are doing something to address it. I didn't really see much in there in regards to that, but I skimmed it very quickly, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe they are, but it didn't feel like that. So we really have to do our part in making sure that people's perception, which is something I brought up at the top of the hour, at the top of the space rather, um, that their perception is actually the reality of the facts. Because that is the misinformation and this perception that things aren't happening, or the Biden administration is not doing what or delivering on anything that would be positively affecting communities, especially Black and Brown communities, is just wrong. And you know I have watched three different Republicans just get on the news on our local cable network, CNN, MSNBC, and say things like, We had the best economy under Trump. He brought jobs back to America. None of those things ever happened. None of those things ever happened. Oh, they were respected us internationally. Now we're the laughing stock. All of those things are exactly opposite. But uh, I do believe that the reporters push back some, but they don't push back as hard as I would like to see them do, and some don't push back at all. Um, and it's unfortunate because then we're left with nothing but more lies even being projected on programs that we're watching. And so then we do have to go to something that is not as popular. The average American is not saying, let me turn on NPR and let me turn on PBS. No, they're hitting the big ones, the MSNBC, the CNN, the NBC, the ABC, the CBS, the Fox. And it's really unhelpful. It's really damaging, and it is really something that we have to combat. It feels like we've been in this election cycle since the last election cycle, and I just feel like that is just the absolute truth. And it's been a long season, and we haven't even begun. But I want us to make sure that we are just hammering out the correct, truthful information. What did you call it, Misty? What did you call it?
Fire hose of
The
truth.
fire hose of truth. I have to write that down because I know I'm going to forget that. Fire hose of truth. And I'm tasking each and every one of us to do that. I'm so proud to see so many of the people in this space that are actually out there in the community doing work, doing advocacy work. I mean, that's just amazing that, uh, Black STEM to just, this is something that I see a need for, and I'm going to be the one to supply it. It's the same thing. T-Bug did the same thing. When she saw a deficit in her community, she stood up, and I know there are many more, and I shouldn't even name names because I'm gonna miss someone. Um, it, and I know that there are so many of you doing so many things, and I applaud you, and I wish you would share it with us too, whether you post it on the timeline or whether or not you speak in the space. It is inspiring. um, I swear, last night I felt like, oh my God, I was just so overwhelmed just reading all of this news, and feeling like the odds just felt, just kept stacking up higher and higher. But this morning, it I don't know why, but I woke up feeling much more refreshed and feeling like, you know what, we can do this, and we will win, and we can conquer these challenges ahead of us. And when I came into the space, my spirit was renewed again just by being in the space with you all. And so I'm very grateful to be able to be a part of this community. And the same way the GOP takes advantage of opportunities uh, to seize the moment, we have to take those same opportunities ourselves. And this is one way. The advocacy, whether or not it's delivering truthful, factual news, or is meeting a need in the community that you see that is not being met, and you have the ability to do that, is what needs to happen. And you all inspire me, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I too am inspired by the many people who come and share with us here every week. I'm also inspired by you and what you bring, and honored that you are my co host, and that you work as hard as I do to ensure that what we're able to provide is information that people can use, and hopefully, get inspired to take that information to other places and use it in many different ways. And we hear examples all the time, like we did today with Black STEM. And one of the things that it reminded me of when she was telling her story, and then Davina was kind of recapping that is a, an adage that someone shared with me that I have never forgotten, and that, um, and that is that action creates motivation. So when you go and do something like that, it actually motivates you to do more, and your action could help to motivate others. So it's just something that has stuck with me, and that it came to mind again today from that example and that recap of it. And I also, much like Soul Sister, you guys don't know, but I spend a lot of time preparing for the space. I don't just, schedule it, open it up and say, hey, let's talk, which I love talking to you guys, but I want it to be meaningful, and to provide information, and not just opinions, but information and resources that you can also share and, take in yourself, and maybe you get further insights than I've gotten. Because sometimes, as I said, my brain was kind of locked this morning because I was in information overload state. And then again, our snow, while it is disappearing, our schools are not prepared for this. So my little one was out of school, so I'm multitasking here today. And apologies to anyone who has, DM'd me or wanted to speak, and I couldn't get to you fast enough because I have a lot going on here. But I still think that it was a very, very productive space, and there was a lot of information that I really didn't get around to sharing, but I will on my timeline. And one of the things I did mention it early on is how, the Heritage Foundation, yes, they have their Project 2025 project, but they plan to institutionalize Trumpism. And the article I found is from the New York Times. And I was looking for the full article, and I wasn't able to get it in the way that I need to, because I don't subscribe to that. I have, subscriptions to the Post, but I will get it. But I just want to read to you a little bit of the part that I was able to see that wasn't paywalled. And this is from the New York Times Magazine. And he says, the foundation's plan, this is the title, Foundation's Plan for Institutionalizing Trumpism. People will lose their jobs, the think tank president said about federal workers. Hopefully, their lives are able to flourish in spite of that. So, kind of heartless, but not surprising. And, Kevin Roberts has been the foundation's president since 2021. And, he's been making his mark on the institution, and came, and the Heritage Foundation came into being during the Reagan years. But he says that, let me see. Roberts, who was not well known outside of policy circles when he took over, has pushed the think tank away from its hawkish roots by arguing against funding the war in Ukraine, a turnabout that prompted some of the Heritage's policy analysts to leave. Now he is looking ahead to the 2024 election and beyond. Roberts told me that he views Heritage role today as institutionalizing Trumpism. Yes, he said it. They quoted him. This includes leading Project 2025, a transition blueprint. They call it a blueprint that outlines a plan to consolidate power in the executive branch, dismantle federal agencies, and recruit and vet government employees to free the next Republican president from a system that Roberts views as stacked against conservative power. The lesson of Trump's first years in office, Roberts told me, is that the Trump administration, with the best of intentions, simply got a slow start. And at Heritage and our allies in Project 2025, we believe that must never be repeated. So they have said in the foreword of this project and initiative that they want the plan and the people to carry out the plan ready to be instituted on day one, the moment the president is sworn into office and utters the words So help me God. you know, so, they have made it very plain and clear. We need to really, really understand what's at stake and who's driving the train, of this authoritarianism. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure that I did mention. I want to give you guys an opportunity to grab some of the things in the nest that I put up there, some great resources and others, but something around climate, because we kind of touched on that when we talked about journalism and some other things. But many of you might know Michael Mann as a climatologist. He is, of course, he was getting defamed all the time because these people, these donors who have, and are supporting this project also support and fund a lot of climate deniers. And so he is actually about to have his day in court. So I want us to start, looking at that and following that story, because it's taken him 10 years, because he brought this lawsuit in 2012. By the University of Pennsylvania Earth and Environmental. He was, teacher there. He's environmental scientist, and the litigation targets two writers. One is called Rand Simberg, an analyst at the right-wing think tank Competitive Enterprise Institute, who published a piece comparing Mann to a convicted serial child molester, and the National Review, which, remember, was started by William F. Buckley, which is very involved in like the conservative manifesto and the ideology that drives a lot of the current day agenda of libertarians and conservative agenda that makes up like the Heritage Foundation and others. But so he's suing this blogger, Mark Steen, who in a blog post favorably quoted the other guy research as calling Mann's research fraudulent. So he's going to have his day in court. And I think that is a good thing. So I want us to keep looking at that story. And also the story of deregulation and how they are fighting against it. And just these recent stories that we've had with all these Boeing incidents. And we've also had a huge influx of train derailments and other things, which we know that the railroad owners, petitioned Trump, and he, gave them what they wanted to cut back on regulations and things. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for us. And, if public transportation is no longer viewed as safe, what does that do to us and our economy? So I just want to remind people of that. And my good friend Adam has come up. I'm going to give him an opportunity. I would close it out to anyone except him because we are done. But Adam very rarely speaks. So I want to give him an opportunity to say something. And then I will close this out with the inspiring words and quote that I like to use from Representative John Lewis.
Thanks, Dee. I appreciate
Hey,
that.
yeah,
It's a great space, and I was glad I was able to make it. I had some personal things I had to do, but Carl had my back and was in here with me, and I had reached out to him.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to speak. There's two people that are in the background listening, and I know they're hearing me. And they're going to hear very loudly from me if they continue to attack this space. So if it happens again, you're going to hear directly from me. And I just want to make sure they are hearing what I'm saying. And I know they are hearing it. So I just want to make sure it has to be addressed sometimes, D. I don't mean to get in the way of your space. It's a phenomenal space. This platform exists for the freedom of speech. We're allowed to speak about whatever we want to speak about. I'm in Arizona, and I support this space. So if you continue to do this, I know exactly where you're at, and you will be reported to CISA, cyber and the owner of the platform and the people that run the platform. They also support this particular space because they also believe in the freedom of speech. So if you do this ever again, if you take this link and do this again, you'll have a knock on your door because what you're doing is actually illegal by all cyber standards. So just need to address that, D. And I don't mean
Thank
to,
you.
uh, divert in any way. I just need them to hear that, okay? Because like
I
like
know
everyone
that
else,
when you do it, exactly, and I know that you do it when it's needed, and so no worries at all. I appreciate you and Carl always looking out for me, and for those who don't know, they are my friends, and they are in cybersecurity. So don't mess with this space. It is being watched and protected. Now you can try it if you want to, but. He's already told you. So thank you, Adam, for coming up and making that clear. um, and with that,
just need to make sure
all
they
right.
heard.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
love you. All right.
Always.
Okay. So with that, guys, again, it's nice to have friends in important places. And I do. And, because the work that we do here is important, and I'm glad that it is supported and, protected. And this is what we face oftentimes in these social media, on these social media platforms, because just like, the right wing is gobbling up all of the newspapers and things, even the small areas where we do find our voice and a place, people try to attack it because they don't want the truth out. They don't want the truth, but we will
That's
not be
it. They're
deterred.
scared of. They're scared of us being able to talk about this, being able to talk about democracy because they want it their way,
Exactly. But
and
we,
they have a very specific agenda.
yes.
So
And
when you're able to, and Soul Sister is able to bring a message, and Mark and everybody else, the spirit that you carry for everyone is amazing, and they try to divide, and we have to always remember that.
absolutely.
Let them not divide us.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Adam, and I appreciate all that you do. In your real life work, which is super important, especially at this time, and what you do for me as a friend. I appreciate how you and Carl look out for me.
Always.
All right. So, with that, guys, you heard it. Don't mess with Advocacy Arena and our weekly Good Trouble chat. Okay. We are here to inform and to inspire, and we will not be deterred. So, with that, I want to leave you with some encouraging words from the late great Representative John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. So never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And that's what we do here every week. We come and make noise and get in trouble because we know it is so necessary, because, he also famously said that, when you see something, you say something. We're all paying attention and we see a lot of things. So we come in here to talk about it so we can go out into our other, circles of influences and share that too, because it does matter and it does make changes, although they may be slow, they do happen. And again, I want to thank everyone. I'm not going to go down the list, but especially my presenters today, Davina, Mark, and Danny, but all of the other wonderful people who participated in the conversation. And I see you down there in the gallery. Even if you'd never come up to speak, or if you didn't come up today, I see you. I love you. I appreciate your support, and your support of this space is what makes this space. And I appreciate that. And, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. So listening is very, very important, just as much as speaking. So I hope that you are all able to take some valuable insights and information away today, because as always, without fail, we always get good stuff. Take it away, use it wherever and however you can, and come back here next week and we're going to talk about it. So with that, I want to leave you all with peace and blessings. And again, have a wonderful, blessed week ahead.